Hello, hello, welcome. We are here, tag team back again, party on, party people. Let's begin. Um, so this the topic for today is something that appeared on Reddit. The user is Seamus Han 3Y, so I'm going to give him credit for this idea. But it's something that we've talked about. But he created a little visual here, or at least he posted the visual, and of the evolution of George's three conflicts in how the story has kind of gone for Ice and Fire. I'm going to try to be in the corner here, and I want to be able to really get into this and show it. So when we say the three conflicts in George's original outline, there is George very clearly says that there will be three books: A Game of Thrones, A Dance with Dragons, The Winds of Winter, and in that each book will roughly have the outline of the first book being the War of the Five Kings, the second book involving Daenerys's invasion of Westeros, and the third book being the invasion of others. And it's not quite like, and so our author here, our visual author here, not George R. R. Martin, Seamus, put here that visually, and then you can kind of see that over time George realized that the War of the Five Kings was taking a lot of time, so he then added a second book, A Clash of Kings, expanding that out, and then that became even larger, and so the War of the Five Kings went into A Storm of Swords, but that definitely finished up the War of the Five Kings, and then he was going to have a 5-year gap, if you remember, and began A Dance with Dragons a bit later. And so A Dance with Dragons was going to be the Aegon and Daenerys invasion story, and then the others would be in the final two books when he decided to have 5 or 6 books. And then A Dance with Dragons gets split and into A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. In the graphic, he puts question marks here, and then which isn't, so I'll go into like this a bit. So the question marks seem to kind of somewhat be, he's like, what is this? Is this really part of the three book plan? It kind of is the 5-year gap. But going back here, if we're going to go for like very small corrections, because this is an excellent graphic actually. So I want to focus on what, it is a really excellent graphic. However, if you're going to go back and be nitpicky, yes, George in his original outline did say Daenerys' invasion. However, from the beginning, in A Game of Thrones, it's very clear that George already had the idea that it wasn't necessarily Aegon, but there would be another Targaryen claimant. That was very clear in the text. In A Game of Thrones, it comes in the form of Jeor Mormont talking about how Aerion Brightflame and his children, and this is like mentioned. And so even though like a lot of people think that Aegon is a Blackfire and the ultimate conflict might be a Blackfire conflict, still George had this idea that there would be 2 Targaryens vying for the throne, and this would happen. Aegon is given baby Aegon is given a face that's not smashed in, so no one can recognize him. All these sorts of things. So it was always going to be a Aegon Daenerys invasion story in the middle, and then the others. And then we kind of go on. This would be Daenerys' invasion, but Aegon as well. This is all very accurate. And then going on with the others, and then this is probably he wanted a 5-year gap, and then he kind of has these books to largely manage the 5-year gap. Keep in mind that when George first envisioned A Dance with Dragons. Danny's flight on Drogon is at the beginning of the story, not at the end, and things like this. So I think it's fair to say that A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons is largely dealing with the 5-year gap and George writing Arms of the Kraken and things like that, and wanting to include it in the story and stuff like that. And then you can kind of see, and this is the important thing here when people say like, can it fit in 7 books? Yeah, probably not. The story can't, at least not the way George writes. Like if George went back to Game of Thrones style writing, maybe, and somebody else could probably do it, but not the way George writes. It's kind of he's been writing in an expansive way. And so you do kind of see here that you know, the Winds of Winter would have to involve Aegon, and maybe Daenerys would come in maybe near the end, and they would deal with that conflict. And then how are we dealing with the others? Is it going to cross over with Dany's story? How is it all going to fit? And people kind of look at things and say, well, it can't. There needs to be an 8th book. And that's kind of true. I do think that unless George R. R. Martin significantly changed his writing style, it would be really hard for him to close things off. His other books do have quick endings, so I will grant him that. Like if you read The Armageddon Rag or Fever Dream or Dying of the Light, they do kind of build and then all of a sudden collapse really fast. Now, what's interesting though is one more thing to think about, and one thing that would like really improve the graphic and make it even more brilliant, is if you added the seasons of Game of Thrones on this, right? Because Game of Thrones, essentially, if you're looking at this final timeline, seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 are War of the 5 Kings. Seasons 5 and 6 are kind of in this, 5-year gap area, the question mark area. Dany's invasion is season 7, and then the other invasion is season 8, and it happens really, really fast. And everyone thought season 8 was so rushed and everything. So, had he also spliced in at the end here the seasons, it would be pretty interesting to look at that. Anyway, I thought this was a fun little graphic to think about, but it really does show that we just kind of, as fans, we kind of have this pile of problems. Like obviously, like George not putting out the Winds of Winter is a huge problem. But even if we got the Winds of Winter, we would still have the Dream of Spring. And everybody kind of goes, well, is that likely? Well, it's really, really difficult. It's really, really difficult on a number of levels. Like, obviously George is getting old, but also just George's writing style is so expansive and it's such a huge story. And how would he deal with this very cluttered ending here that he supposedly planned out years and years ago? So, a lot of people do ask me the question like, oh, do you think we'll get the Winds of Winter? And I say, there's still a very small chance, but it's not going to be the book you want. It's not going to be the book you want. It's going to be, people are going to read it and be like, oh my God, the story is still getting bigger. And so I say that a bit. I'm like, we may get it, but it's not going to be the book you want. Not to be a downer on things. People always accuse me of being a downer. Okay. So I'm sure this topic will come back because this always happens. I think the Watchers things got out of order here. Since Dominican Republic placement is your wives, only one wife, but yes, my wife. Does that mean you're going to be go back to full-time YouTuber, or are you going to keep working remotely? My situation is a bit in flux, but I'm not allowed to work remotely, but there might be some opportunities for me to go back and forth. Hopefully I'll have more time. But it's, the thing that really is the big time suck in my life is strange. Like, yes, work is there, and work is a time suck, my regular job, but children are way more of a time suck than that. And I know people are like, oh, Preston, he put out a lot of videos when he was in Taiwan. That was great. It's like, yes, yes, yes. I also had one kid back, for a lot of that. So now I've got two. So I hope I'll have more time. I'd like to get back into some other things, write more, um, produce more videos, things like this. But hopefully that'll happen. But it's kind of in the new year. There's going to be a lot of work still until going to the end of the year with me. But I know people look forward to that. They're like, the good old days of President Taiwan when he had more time. When he had more time. Um, Also, feel free to go on an hour rant over Harris Trump show that aired last week. We are all desperate to hear your thoughts. Spicy politics, so quick. I watched the debate. I watched actually a fair bit of the debate, and it was. I will warn you. I don't think the debate really matters that much. I think people have largely made up their minds, and um, but watching the debate, um, strange. Like Kamala was fine. Kamala was perfect. She did everything right, everything that one is supposed to do in a debate, and she was clever about it because she had a bunch of little. She knew to have sound bite kind of statements here and there because that's what's going to be remembered. People are going to take those clips and make them into sound bites. So she was doing really well on that. A lot of people do a review of it and they say, oh, she was so good at needling Trump. I don't think that was her main focus. I think her main focus was like producing sound bites. Um, Trump was not focused on that. I actually think Trump, by and large, did better than he did during the Biden debate. He was less crazy than he was during the Biden debate. Um, the thing is, during the Biden debate, everyone was focused on uh, Biden's poor performance, and they kind of forgot about Trump's like crazy performance. And here, like Kamala was being regular, and so Trump looked really bad by comparison. And then, of course, the cat thing was such an incredible soundbite that you're just like, oh my God, like that's the one thing remembered from the debate. Like now it's like the Kamala Pence debate, like vice president's debate from 4 years ago. Does anyone remember anything other than the fly? Like everyone, like only people remember the fly. And so coming out of this debate with Kamala and Trump, like the only thing people remember is Trump is claiming that Haitian immigrants are eating dogs. Like the immigrants are eating dogs and cats. Like that's the only thing people like that Trump, like a crazy grandpa, like went on Facebook, believed some like weird meme story about immigrants eating dogs and cats and believed it. And that's the only thing people took out of it. Um, and do I think that's going to make a significant difference? No, no. Like that's the sad fucking thing, right? The sad state of our country is that a guy proves that he's a fucking nut job, like who just like believes random memes and has no media literacy, and it's just like they're eating cats and dogs, and it's the only thing people are taking out of it. But you know, what you gonna do? Um, Do you think season 8 made George rewrite part of his story based on the reaction to season 8? I think about this issue a bit. On the one hand, I kind of say, if I were George and the reaction to season 8 was what it was, and even if the reaction to season 8 wasn't what it was, the fact that like season 8 came out, I'd feel like I would want to make something different just to be interesting and contrarian. But the thing is I'm a contrarian. So like I would want it to be different for the sake of being different. I don't know if George would necessarily have that desire. The only thing that makes me think differently is that George has been complaining about House of the Dragon deviating from his outline, but he didn't make those same complaints on on Game of Thrones, which makes you think, okay, they were really following what George wanted. Like they weren't really inventing that much. Like Dan and Dave were actually following the outline. But will George will George still like want to change it for the sake of changing it? I think because George is kind of a gardener, he kind of writes and just things happen as they happen. Like I say, like Victarion was gonna die. And the fact that Victarion didn't die is pretty huge, And that George changed who visions at the House of the Undying like mean, and refer to based on just him writing and deciding, no, let's keep Victarion alive. So I think that you take something like season 8 happening, and even though that's his outline, I don't think maybe the negative reaction to season 8 would make him want to change it. It would make me want to change it. I would probably want to change it anyway, but the negative reaction to season 8 would make me want to change it too. But I think George naturally, through his writing process, because it's more gardening, would have changed it anyway, because he's just incapable of writing in an outline fashion. That's just not the way he writes. He writes as he goes, and so I think if the story were going to be finished, and it's not, like, let's not have any delusion, there will be no finish to A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, A Dream of Spring is never, ever, ever going to happen. But if it were, I couldn't see it being the same just because it's not George's writing style. Not necessarily because it got a bad reaction or anything like that. I just don't like him sitting in front of his computer and having the story flow. It would have come out differently. That's I think the only reason. But keep in mind that it's not going to flow. It's not going to happen. There's going to be no Dream of Spring. So, it's a lot. It's a lot of what ifs on like something that's never going to happen. So. Do you think Winds will have a gap? By that I mean a mid-book time skip. No, I don't think that there will be a mid-book time skip. I think it's far too difficult to manage. The fact that even when he planned a time skip, he couldn't pull it off. I couldn't see one naturally happening where there would be a time skip and you'd go, even when you look at some of the events, like take something like the Mercy chapter, which the Mercy chapter I predict is kind of happening near a third way through, or maybe a halfway through the Mercy chapter. Could you imagine a 5-year time skip after that, or a 1-year time skip after that? What would Arya be doing for a year? That kind of thing. Could you imagine Daenerys after getting back from the Dothraki Sea and doing her thing, like stopping in Volantis for a year, or stopping back in Meereen for a year? I just couldn't imagine that. Or Stannis returning to the Wall and wintering for a year or something like that. A lot of these things I just couldn't imagine anything going on. Like it might improve the story, especially considering you're talking about like having Sam learn stuff at the Citadel and stuff like that. There's a lot of things where a time skip would be helpful, but I don't see it happening at any point. I just couldn't see this, like, as George writing, there being a stopping point with all of the characters. And keep in mind, there's a lot of characters at this point. There's a lot of POVs. There's twice as many than at the end of Storm of Swords. Him like happening to stumble into one. No, I don't think there's any no time. I don't think there can be any time skips going on. Um, sorry, this is off topic, but Waymore Royce had moleskin gloves. When the gloves become whited when he died. uh, I don't think I don't know if there's much logic to how the animation of animals occurs. I mean, you're right that like bones are like going around, but it had something to do with like the marrow. Like only after you cracked the marrow did the bones stop moving. Like when Summer cracked the marrow of whites and broke them open and sucked the marrow out, did they stop being animated? I don't. Uh so hmm. I mean, can leather and moleskin and things that used to be alive be animated? Uh, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. But obviously nothing. Like obviously, dead things can't be animated anyway. There was a cracked article from a long time ago. I want to say close to 15 years ago about why a zombie apocalypse just couldn't happen, and it talked about how like you know the muscles and tendons and all of these things and bones breaking and all like none of the zombies can go anywhere. Like it takes like a lot for a living animal to have everything go right so that we can actually do regular locomotion, like, and to imagine that some like decaying thing could still have all of the things working well to have it move, like the tendons and the electric impulses going through your nerves down, clicking those muscles, having those muscles and tendons and move and everything move and be successful in moving. It would just be impossible. It'd be impossible. I mean, not to mention the fact that like things rot and animals go after dead things and all sorts of things. Like it would just, there's nothing to keep your body warm, so you'd freeze solid. If you were north of the wall, and if you were like in some place hot, like it would just be the body would just freaking melt. Just all of these things. But yeah, could moleskin gloves be animated? That's the thing. Could things that were once living be animated? Ah, I mean, obviously we're talking about something so ridiculous, but the fact that like the bones stopped animating after Summer sucked the marrow out makes me think that there has to be a little more to what's going on with the animation, that it can't just be anything. Can't just be like skin by itself animating, especially after being tanned. But Helena not autistic, but experiencing disassociation because she has already experienced all the grief of her child passing due to prior visions. Also, her manipulating Damon's visions gives him agency. I mean, I think it gives her agency, but so on Damon, I'll get the easy thing out of the way. Like we kind of all understand that we human beings are contradictory, that we kind of believe in cause and effect, but we also kind of believe in free will at the same time, and those two things like directly contradict. Okay, obviously. um all of us are like, we accept that no, something must have a cause and something must have a cause before that. Like that's how things work. But then we kind of all believe that we have choice over things. But if we believe in cause and effect, we should have no choice. Everything caused us to do something. Everything influenced us to do something. Like everything is manipulation. So I understand that there's an innate contradiction in human beliefs, and when analyzing the story, that contradiction is there. However, understanding that humans are contradictory, we separate we separate what we call manipulation when the cause and effect seems very heavy versus, influence or suggestion when the cause and effect seems light and the free will seems heavy, heavier. And so giving someone a vision to help you confront an issue, we would say is something like influence. But when it gets really hardcore and there's, then it's manipulation. So even though we're talking about visions at the beginning of the season when he's like banging his mom and stuff, that seems more like influence. While when you're at the end, when you say, well, you got to support Rhaenyra or else the world's going to end, that seems more like manipulation. And so that's why I say like Daemon loses his agency by the end, because there's no choice. It's like, well, the world's going to end unless I support Rhaenyra. It's no longer like I need to face my demons. It's like the difference between like going to a therapist and a therapist being like, well, tell me about your mother, revealing things, and a therapist being like, and being like, what do you think you should do? And like bringing you down a road versus going to the therapist and the therapist saying, you know what you should do? X, Y, Z. Like done. That's kind of the difference. But yes, could Helena but making sense of Helena, yes, I do admit that if Helena were experiencing her visions and she'd already seen her children die many times, it would have been an interesting choice to have her not react at all. But they did have her react. They just had her react oddly, weirdly. She kind of, shut things out. It was a peculiar way of reacting, but it was still a reaction. It would have been very interesting for her to be like, to not react at all. Like, yes, I knew this was coming. Okay, here I am. Like I've experienced it all. That would be very odd. But that's not really how they played it. They just kind of played it like Helena's crazy. Like Helena's crazy because she's been getting visions her whole life. And so every scene that she's in, she can act however you want her to act in that scene because she's crazy. Helena, and I'm talking, this includes season 1. Like Helena acts differently in every fucking scene. There's no consistency in the way she acts. I mean, she's literally in the middle of a party smashing spiders talking to herself. And then she's like, at a dinner party a few episodes later, acting fairly normal, like just a little, all you can say is maybe a little ditzy, and then at the end of season 2 being completely cogent, So it's but it's all fine because the visions made her, the visions messed with her mind, so she can just act however she acts. I get a lot of shit from people because a lot of people kind of say, when I say like, oh, I don't think there's much evidence that she's actually autistic, and people say, well, autistic people can act like X, Y, Z, and I'm like, well, if autistic people can act like anything, then how can anything be evidence either? So it, you can't really prove anything with because human beings act differently all the time, and they have a whole range of ways that they act. It's very difficult to prove anything on the way like Helena acts or what she's up to. So I don't know what to do with her. Do you think that one of Dany's dragons will betray her because of the horn blows? One of the betrayals happens like that. Well, I'm trying to think. The betrayals were like one for love, one for blood. What are they again? Let's make sure. I get the quote right. 3 treasons you will know. Um, one, the warlock whispered of three treasons: one for blood, once for blood, once for gold, once for love. Um, I suppose if you're saying like, well, there's gold bands on the horn, therefore the dragon could betray her for gold, once for gold, or blood was wiped into the horn and it's blood magic. So the once for blood is actually the dragon. You know, but Dany certainly thinks that the first traitor was Miri Mazdor, but who knows? Who knows? Anything can fit, right? I, I don't know. I don't know if they'll think about it like that. I think that's an interesting idea that that one of the dragons is the one that's betraying her. Um, but hmm, oh. I mean, it's fun and all. I think it's something probably George didn't even think of on that one. Could the dragon be the one betraying them? But that, and then her perceiving it as a betrayal like that is another thing. Um, I see. Okay, so can the fanfic be finished in 7 books? Um, I believe the fanfic can absolutely be finished in 7 books. It's the amount of time and effort in anything is the thing that's daunting. Like I see how much time it's taking me and the group now, and how much effort is put in. That's the thing that stresses me most. Can it be done in 7 books? I believe that it can be done easily, but also like it's like our writing process is not George's. We're not gardeners. We're very much planning and thinking about closing plot threads off. Like that's the number one thing we think of is like, how can we bring the characters together and how can we finish this up? How can we close this off? There's very little with the fanfic of trying to create new stories. Um, Maybe Ario Hota, like the Ario Hota story is like maybe the one exception of creating something new that's like ballooning, while everything else is like, how can we end this battle? How can we fucking end this battle? We got to close this off. We got to wrap this up. How can we get to Cersei's trial? It's 100% focused on wrapping this shit up. Like, and so, but the plan with the fanfic is having Dany land at the end of the Winds of Winter, and then yes, the other invasion, and Dany's conflict with Aegon would be happening somewhat simultaneously. They would just not be hearing about things in the north as the others head south, and they'd just be like fighting and not thinking about it. And you'd go back and forth, and then you'd have a final conflict. But I also see the final conflict being kind of a cliffhanger, like no big, huge, epic battle, like say the way Brandon Sanderson ended Wheel of Time. That would be more like all the armies are meeting, and then something happens at that moment before they can have some sort of big epic battle or something. But which essentially the plan is to largely cut the other's invasion, like sever it quite a bit, which is what the show did too. The show massive, like the way they dealt with it was like, yeah, let's just sever that other's invasion. The other's invasion was 3 episodes. And it wasn't really even 3 episodes, considering one episode was everybody fucking just talking at Winterfell for a whole episode, right? Like they essentially had 2 episodes for the other's invasion, So it's kind of doing the same thing. If someone shows up to the Shadow Tower to join the Watch, do they have to go to Castle Black to swear the vows? I don't think so. And I know why this is being like kind of asked. This is asked because people are thinking about Corin Halfhand and um, and Arthur Dane and things like this, and whether or not we have um, different different people hiding as different people in the Watch. Um, so there's this theory. Oh God, I have to show this like map of the North. I still never really like. It was such this weird this this was long before I even had my channel. Okay, I remember being in this like debate with somebody, and they were not really giving me like what they believed. They were giving this like long convoluted like, you need to start, you need to dig for your, you need to dig deeper here. What's going on here? You need to dig deeper. Like, and they never really told me what they were talking about. But for the most part, what I got was, if you look at the companions that that Ned travels with to the Tower of Joy, that they are Wool, Risewell, Glover. What are all of them? I've got to go to the. I'll just do a search for Ethan Glover. It's Martin Cassell, Faithful Theo Wool, Ethan Glover, Sir Mark Risewell, Howland Reed, Lord Dustin, right? So there's this idea of like, okay, if there is a surrender of some sort at the Tower of Joy, and they take Arthur Dane or whoever, it doesn't matter, Oswell went, or whatever. You bring him down to Starfall, and then from Starfall, they all agree to go to the Night's Watch. The idea is that like, if you look at the people that were his companions, that somehow like the ship would stop maybe at Barrowton or in the Rills, and then up at the Glovers for Deepwood Mott. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped Howland Reed, Greywater Watch. Like, it's this like line, and then you bring them up to Shadow Tower, and that like George R. R. Martin is like leaving this. And I remember having this argument being like, why does it matter where the people are from, considering that they're all dead? And he's like, no, these are like breadcrumbs. These are like clues that George R. R. Martin is giving us to like have us look at the map and figure out like where it all leads to, because it all leads to the Shadow Tower, this like crazy, mysterious, puzzle that we're all going to figure out. Not that like George R. R. Martin himself, like the answer is clearly not George R. R. Martin hasn't figured it out himself, like, which is the real situation. Like, he made a mystery box about Starfall and he doesn't fucking know what it is. But it was this like long story of like, actually it was these, George R. R. Martin left these breadcrumbs of like leading us to the Shadow Tower. And because that's where the Kingsguard who went into the Watch like had there, and that somehow if they went to the Shadow Tower, they could exist there, and everybody else wouldn't know that they were there. The other day, a friend of mine went to a bar, and he was at a bar, and he overheard some randos talking about. He was in Canada, and he heard some randos like talking about like the Arthur Dane is Corin Halfhand, Hightower is Mance Rayder, Oswell Went is Tormund, that kind of theories. And I was like, he's like, what? And he texts me and he's like, they seem to be talking about this. Like, do you believe any of this? I'm like, Mance Rayder supposedly went to the Winterfell for the wedding. You'd think Jaime Lannister or Ned or somebody would have noticed him if he were if he were actually one of those characters. But so I think they still have to, they can swear their vows probably at the Shadow Tower. I don't think you all have to go to Castle Black to necessarily. But I don't know if there's an official canon on this. That's just my guess. Um, what are your thoughts on the 2024 presidential debate and predictions for the vice president debate? Are they even doing the vice president debate? Are they going to do it? Oh, they are. October 1st. Oh man. From what we've seen, JD Vance is not actually that great of a debater. But again, people don't really care about these debates too much. I'm sure he'll put out his talking points, and Waltz will put out his talking points, and they'll say that Waltz won probably, and no one will care. Like, I don't think it matters too much. I don't, did Kamala Harris and Mike Pence and the Fly make any difference? That was considered a disaster for Mike Pence, but I don't know if it really changed anything. But again, I think these presidential debates, they're useful if you can get in a good soundbite. I don't think people watch anymore. I think everything's about YouTube and did you see that clip? Did you see that clip? But right now, I think everybody's kind of made up their minds. And, I really do think it's about, I understand that everyone likes to check polls and the horse race and things like that. But when you really focus on real issues that people care about, some people really care about immigration, some people really care about abortion and things like that. I think those are the things that really actually shift the electorate, and people are very focused on those. And hopefully, the Democrats win. I don't know what will happen to the world if the reverse happens. Trump wants to get out of NATO and abandon Ukraine, and he would appoint more Supreme Court justices that are right wing, making it so that there'll be no hope of making any changes for 2 generations. It's just yeah, it's nerve wracking. It's nerve wracking. I mean, I think Kamala will win, but it's nerve wracking. I'm not 100% sure. It's but yeah, my thoughts were Trump looked crazy, and that Kamala was able to produce some good sound bites and was able to win the debate. But again, winning the debate doesn't necessarily do anything. So, how many videos are out there of Trump being crazy? How many? Do people not know that Trump is crazy? That people just don't care. They just don't care. You can throw into the ethos 1,000 more videos of Trump being an absolute idiot. He invited Laura fucking Loomer to a 9/11, and Laura Loomer then the next day. This is where we are in the country, man. Laura Loomer tweeted that that if Kamala Harris wins, the White House is going to smell of curry, because Kamala Harris is half Indian. And even Marjorie Taylor Greene was like, dude, you crossed the line. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a fucking racist, is like, dude, you're making us look bad. And that's in the news cycle one day, and then people don't care. It's just weird end times, right? That could happen. Oh my God. Trump had a speech yesterday that didn't make the news at all, where he literally said that Haitian refugees in Springfield, Ohio were raping and sodomizing girls. He literally said this, and it didn't make the news at all. No one cares. Absolute horrible, insane stuff that makes the eating dogs and cats thing seem sane. It was just out of control. But we're at this weird point where it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't fucking matter. Half the country's insane, and they're going to vote for Trump anyway. And I just don't know what'll happen. It's just, considering that civilization is teetering on the brink, you'd think that these things would be a bigger deal. but everyone just doesn't fucking care. Um, Watch Studio Ghibli movies with the kids while they're still young. Similar themes of lost magic after one grows up, and the climax is always vague. The Studio. Oh, okay, okay. Spirited Away and things like that. Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I didn't know that was the the thing for all of it together. Yeah, I do. I wonder how my son would like them or not. If he would have, if he has the attention span or whatever. It's hard for him to watch like more than 30 minutes at a time. So like we break up movies a bit, so we'll like, um, but yeah, I think, it's true though that all those movies kind of have a really weird ending. I could see him watching something like Spirited Away and be like, "What did this mean? What did this mean?" I mean, I think he would find certain things very funny, like the oddness of all the creatures and stuff. He would think is hilarious. But I do wonder. Um, I'll have to try it out. It'll be interesting. I think I will see. Um, I'm trying to think of the longest movies he's watched. Like we broke up Lilo and Stitch. We broke up the Pokemon movie, the one with Mewtwo in it. I think maybe he'd seen Cars. He was not very interested in Cars, but like I'm trying to think. I think he watched Frozen once. It was odd, but we'll see. I'll see because they're definitely more mellow rather than stimulating like Western cartoons. Um, Stannis and Aerys have parallels with both burning people alive, being obsessed with pyromania. Maybe Stannis slowly goes crazy and sacrifices his daughter. Well, there's no time for slowly, but the idea is that can he go crazy, and and I guess the answer is yes. I mean, we've seen like Stannis. He looks gaunt and not eating and staring into fire when we last see him in the sacrifice chapter. He seems to come back and be more sane in the Theon sample chapter. But it seems legit that somehow either he or Selyse and Melisandre burn Shireen. Like we were told that this was the plan. So somehow they need the people to be going crazy. I mean, Stannis. I know that the fans love him, but I don't know if George R. R. Martin likes Stannis that much. And so he could definitely have him just going crazy, especially considering it's kind of been set up before, like Stannis being like, "I would have never killed Edric Storm. I would never do something like that," and then just something worse. But yeah, hmm, getting a couple more chapters. Like when would Shireen would? I guess the burning of Shireen would be like the end of the Winds of Winter or something. Try to. Giscari immigrants eat dogs. What's funny is that dogs. I mean, dog was in like Chinese and Korean cuisine, but I'm trying to remember which country China banned eating dogs. Oh no. Oh, various areas in China have banned dog, but I think you can still eat dog in certain parts. Keep in mind, like when I lived in Shanghai, there was There was occasionally, you'd see dogs on sticks. Like I don't think you'd find that in Shanghai now. I mean, I was kind of on the outskirts of Shanghai, but this was, back in '99. It was a very different time. But yeah, you definitely see dogs like available. I mean, it was considered more of a delicacy. It was more expensive than other stuff. But Shenzhen, Shenzhen has banned eating dogs. When I was a teacher there, I remember asking my students, I once asked them, like, how you feel about eating dog. And the class was I had about 50 students in this class. About half of them thought eating dog was bad, and half thought dog was delicious. Um, and, but it's this weird thing about this story that didn't happen though, but this idea of like, you're going straight to the weird, the most otherizing thing, one of the most otherizing things that we have of like foreigners. In fact, it's strange. I mean, Calpularian, you're actually tapping into something that is interesting. Because George R. R. Martin, so I've never been a pet owner. It's not a big part of my life. It just never was. I don't own dogs and cats. I think dogs and cats are cute. They're great, but I don't have a big love for them like some people do. And so when George R. R. Martin was talking about Blood and Cheese, he mentioned, oh man, there was that scene where he kicked the dog, and he's like, he seemed evil then. And to me, I was like, I don't get it. Like, that doesn't affect me in the same way it affects other people. Like, to some people, seeing a dog getting kicked on screen is 100 times worse than seeing a person get kicked on screen. In fact, if you've ever seen the movie The Fly 2, that's the one with Eric Stoltz instead of Jeff Goldblum. At the beginning of the movie, the villain does some experiments on some dogs. And then at the end of the movie, he gets experimented on, and it somehow seems like justice, even though like experimenting on a person is worse than experimenting on a dog. That's not justice, like, but definitely in people's minds, like many people's minds, like doing something to a dog or cat is somehow worse. And George R. R. Martin clearly put this in his blog post about like the dog getting kicked, like, oh, it was such a rough moment. Like, for me, it was like nothing. I was like, you're showing people dying constantly. I don't care if a dog gets kicked. But George R. R. Martin went there with the Giscari. Like, he wanted to make them seem odd and foreign and even a bit evil by making them dog eaters and making them kill puppies, right? Right there's the whole thing about how the Unsullied have to raise a puppy and then kill it, and it's like, oh no, you're killing puppies. Like, it's right, like it goes right to the heart of like pulling on people's heartstrings of like hating the foreigner is treatment of dogs and cats. And actually, when I was in the Middle East, people would also talk up like Middle Easterners, for the most part, don't like dogs, but they really like cats. It's an odd thing. Dogs are a rarity in the Middle East, but cats are everywhere. And people would really like play up the fact that, they don't like dogs. They don't like dogs. In fact, in Abu Ghraib, they were using dogs to scare the prisoners. But I remember but it's like, when people would disparage Middle Easterners when I was there, they definitely use their dislike of dogs as something to disparage them, as if like it's the natural state of man to love dogs, and therefore there's something wrong with Middle Easterners for not being huge into dogs. But yeah, but this is the whole thing. Like the reason that meme like spread, that they're eating dogs, was able to like grip people, is because people have this weird attachment to dogs. There's also an episode of Atlanta where the guy goes to a shooting range and is like shooting an outline of a dog, and everybody's like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, you all have outlines of humans. Like, so Um, uh, skip the super chat. I'm sorry. Um, oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking, could Sam have written the pink letter if Feast ends around the time of Cersei's chapter in Dance with Dragons, and then Sam would have access to the glass candle, and Marwyn would have departed Old Town. I think timeline wise, yes, absolutely. Sam could have written the pink letter. Um, the I think even in the fanfic, we have Sam observing the pink letter um, incident, because timeline wise, yes, Sam has access to the glass candle. Absolutely, like it's before the first day of winter. He has access to ravens. He has access to white ravens. He has access to the glass candle. Timeline wise, Sam could absolutely do it. But then we're like, well, why would Sam do it? Like, it's true that like he has glass candles, so he could observe all of these different things. Like he could observe the reek stuff. He could observe like all of the stuff where people are like, oh, but who would know this information and this information? Doesn't Mance know this? And doesn't Theon know this? And doesn't Stannis know this? And everyone kind of triangulates and tries to figure out um, who could have written the pink letter based on that information. Yes, Sam has a glass candle. Yes, he is there with ravens before the events. Absolutely, he has the means. Absolutely, he has the opportunity. But then the question is motive. Like, why would Sam want to, scare Jon and make him angry at that moment in order for Jon to get stabbed and cause him to go off, and forsake his vows and try to uh, march south? Like either the pink letter is trying to, like, you could look at the pink letter many ways. Like, okay, the pink letter, maybe it's a legitimate letter that is trying to get Jon to give up Reek and the princess and like completely surrender to the Boltons. Okay, why would Sam want to do that? I can't see a motivation for him to do that. Or it's trying to get Jon to be really angry and march south for some reason. You could see Stannis having that motivation. You could see Mance having that motivation. Why would Sam have that motivation? Like, what's Sam's dog in this fight? And then you could say, oh, the pink letter's motivation is to have Jon lose his temper, so he does something stupid like forsaking his vows. Okay, again, like how does Sam like fit into this? Like, why would Sam want Jon to do something nuts like that? So it's not that Sam doesn't have the means and opportunity. He just doesn't have the motive. I mean, maybe because somebody could come up with something interesting, but I just don't know what it would be. But anyway, sorry I missed on that. But it's the first time I've actually ever heard anybody suggest that Sam could I mean, it's the first time I've ever thought about Sam like doing it. Like, he definitely has the opportunity. Of course, now it's like, oh, well, maybe it could be Jock and Agar, or it could be Aleras, or it could be Lazy Leo. All of them as well would have access to the glass candle, uh, and could and had access to ravens and such. I mean, Sam has more access, but maybe Jock and Agar is trying to do something. Um, mm, 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 mm. Benjen's plot was kind of abandoned. George had plans for his return, but as the story progressed, it became more difficult to bring him back. Um, Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. Um, like George definitely had the opportunity to bring him back with cold hands. Like he could have had Benjen be cold hands, but that's just like not. It's just not the case because he was asked that point blank by his editor, and he said no. That cold hands is not Benjen. It's one of those differences between book and show. Um, but I'm trying to think where else like he could have had him slipped in or something. Um, because you can't bring Benjen back prior to the election because Benjen would have been elected Lord Commander by like overwhelmingly, right? So you can't have Benjen back before John becomes Lord Commander. Um, and the ranging in a Clash of Kings is in part to find Benjen. So I mean, I suppose they could have had something where they find Benjen and then he dies or something in at the during the Core and Half Hand story. But I'm trying to think just what I sit there and wonder like what possible use can Benjen be? I don't know. I mean the show didn't really come up with a very good reason either, except for to be like an exposition dump, and then to uselessly save John for no reason, in that final scene. But he was for the most part an exposition dump, right? Um, he arrives to save Bran and Mira. They could have walked on their own. They didn't really need that scene. They could have cut that out, but he was just there to explain stuff. But what it's something maybe somebody can send me their ideas on what Benjen is doing and why, like what use bringing Benjen back would be. It's hard because I'm like, Bran is in front of a fucking weirwood tree. He can see anything in the world and anything going backward in time. So, like, what good can Benjen um, be to the story? Like, what can he add? Uh, and so I'm stumped. I'm currently stumped on like what one would do with Benjen when he returned. The same with like Stone Snake. Like Stone Snake disappears. What is he gonna do? What is he gonna do? Uh, what story do we have left north of the Wall? I mean, we have a few mutineers at Craster's Keep. We've got the others. We've got Bran. There's not that many stories left. The Weeper. We've got the Weeper. We've got who's attacking the Bridge of Skulls. You've got a few mutineers left at Craster's Keep. You've got Bran, and you've got Hardhome. And how does Stone Snake and Benjen help the story? I don't know. I look forward to your ideas on what one can do with Benjen, because at this point, if you bring him back, he's got to be brought back for something major. I know that the show would bring characters back and then immediately kill them with no use. But like, you feel like if you're going to bring somebody back, let it be there. Let it be big. And then The Last of Us, episode 1 told us how the zombie apocalypse could happen. I mean, the nice thing about the Last of Us is their idea keeps the human beings alive. The fungus is essentially still using the body, right? And so they're not dead zombies. That's the big thing, I think, unless there's some bodies that are, I don't know if their bodies are dead in there. But The Last of Us probably did the best you can do with explaining how a zombie thing could happen. I mean, the others were what, the rage virus and 28 Days Later, something like that. Um, but the idea that people are dead is so silly, or would come back from the dead would be silly. In I think it's Return of the Living Dead. Like the dead gets down, like the dead animation is down on like a molecular level. It's like real, like anything can be animated um, in the Return of the Living Dead universe. I don't know if you guys know about the weird split of Night of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead. Like the creators of Night of the Living Dead like split with their rights and everything. So like George Romero went off and did the further Dead movies, like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Land of the Dead. And then the other guy did the Return of the Living Dead. So he got to use Living Dead. And George Romero got Dead, you know. Um, Check out John Boy doc on the Reform Party. There's an event very similar to Ned's attempted coup. Huh. What? Oh. Oh. I'm trying to see. Everybody's just like, this is the. I'm trying to figure out this John Boy reform thing, and um how insane. Everybody's talking about him being insane. There's a doc. Hmm. Oh, there's a documentary on the Reform Party. Oh, I'll have to watch it sometime. Um, the yeah, the Reform Party was always like the spoiler party. I mean, Trump used to be in the Reform Party, wasn't he? Wasn't he? Didn't his first time he ran for president was with the Reform Party? I mean, it's kind of famous for like Ross Perot and Jesse Ventura and stuff, but um, I'll have to check this out. But like I say, third parties in America are have never been anything more than spoilers, um, and so there's um, no real hope for them. Um, is Tyrion slowly becoming Tywin in A Dance with Dragons? I think he's always been Tywin. I think that's isn't that the whole joke. Is that the whole joke? Is that oh gosh golly. Oh, hold on a second. I'm gonna get. I think Tyrion has always been Tywin. I think that's the whole idea is that Tyrion's kind of always been vicious. Had the chip on his shoulder, loved sex workers and things like that. Um, that's I'm trying to think of like the big differences between them. I mean, Tyrion is more self-destructive. Um, Tyrion's more self-questioning. Uh, I think Tyrion's smarter. He's more well read. Things like this. But Tywin is supposed to be ruthless, but I don't necessarily think that he's becoming Tywin. I think if there were going to be an arc for him, it would be the reverse, that he would try to that he realizes he's too much Tywin and that he needs to become his own person. That would be my guess for where his character was going, rather than you know because Tyrion has already just been like a pretty horrible murderer rapist like so far in the story. Uh, he has to like turn a page and become a better human being. At least, I mean, that's how they did it in the show, right? The show he became he became a better human being over time. But So I think. Oh, but this is in a Dance with Dragons. Is he becoming more Tywin? Trying to think about his like ruthlessness. Um, I misread this at first. I was like, oh, is going forward in the story, but in A Dance with Dragons is he becoming more and more like Tywin. Um, let's see. He starts out pretty manipulative. Then but by the time he gets into the Second Sons camp, he's straight up murdering people and killing people, right? I mean, he does that weird rape in Volantis. Weirdly rapes that woman in Volantis. That's some weird stuff. But then he definitely cares about Penny, and he falls into that situation again. I mean, I'm gonna say that he has, even though that they really try to make the parallels a lot, they really focus on them a lot. I do think that Tyrion is enough of his own person that he's not Tywin. Um, Tywin doesn't have the same insecurity. Like Tywin is not as insecure as Tyrion. He's not as intelligent. He's not as funny. He's not as uh, and is also not as erratic. I think Tyrion, you can kind of, I mean, Tywin, you can kind of predict his actions. Well, Tyrion, you kind of don't know what to expect. Sometimes he's nice, and sometimes he's horrible. So I don't know if I can see a trajectory like that. He's kind of a bad person at the beginning, and he's kind of a bad person at the end. Um, if there's going to be a change for him, it's going to be in the Winds of Winter. Preston just called autistic people crazy. I did not. I specifically said that Helena was crazy, and but I did not say that autistic people were crazy. I said Helena was crazy. Um, have you seen Clerks? Thoughts about that movie? So the weird thing about um, um, Clerks is that there was a time where kind of everybody worshipped Kevin Smith. Like Kevin Smith in the mid '90s was considered this huge up and comer who was gonna be who had revolutionized film, and he was kind of also the first person in the mainstream that would talk about kind of nerd culture, debating movies, debating Star Wars, like this stuff that is so ubiquitous now. Um, that when you watch Clerks and they're having that Star Wars discussion, that was the first of its kind. Like we're just like, oh my god, they put that in a movie, and now every inch of Star Wars has been debated and talked about and laughed about over and over and over again. So it was like dudes hanging out and doing what they do on the internet, like, but not on the internet, was like revolutionary. These ideas, and the fact that like any Joe off the street could like film a movie if he wanted, it was revolutionary. And so people had high hopes for him. And I thought at the time, I thought Mallrats was fucking hilarious. The Chasing Amy got all of these great reviews. Um, and then, he Kevin Smith was never really able to do anything more, which is fine. I mean, he did a lot. He did a lot in his life. He did more than most of us. That's fine. Now he just sits and talks about movies and waves his arms a lot and talks about smoking weed. That's fine. But people really had high hopes for him, like really thought he was going to be this like epic director. And that just never happened. Like anything. I mean, people made the same hype about M. Night Shyamalan. Like, oh my God, this guy's going to be fucking epic. No, it just didn't happen. So you realize it was a lot of hype, but he was way ahead of his time. He was really ahead of his time. More on his like ideas of where society was going, and where, predicting essentially that the internet would essentially be, what Clerks is, which is kind of funny. But the movie, I mean, I liked it at the time. You're looking back at it, it's very poorly acted. Some of the stuff is just dumb, gross out jokes. Like, for instance, like the woman going in and having sex with a corpse on a toilet and which was used in Weekend at Bernie's as well. Like just dumb. But there are some laugh out funny lines, like laugh out funny jokes too. Um, you know, my girlfriend sucked 32 dicks or whatever in a row, like that like there's hilarious stuff in there, but it's he made his empire, but he's also always going to be remembered as being this like failure to launch like superstar. um but I don't know. He has his moments of genius. Like even for some reason, I felt obligated to watch um, Jay and Silent Bob rebooted. Horrible movie. But then you get to the end, and Ben Affleck says, "You you go through life thinking you're Batman, and then you realize you're Thomas Wayne." There's so much fucking like the genius fucking line. Like, oh my god, I'm glad I watched that whole piece of trash movie for that one line. That one line where I'm like, man, that's a really fucking good line. Like, you go through life thinking you're Batman, and then you realize you're Thomas Wayne. Like, wow. Um, that So, look, I for a Gen Xer, he has a different feeling, and it's just and watching him just do his thing now is ridiculous considering what he all the potential where we thought he was going. Um, did the Mountain's Men go off the cliff in John 2? Oh no, 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 no. Mr. Gomble is talking about um the fanfic here, and where he's talking about John Conn's battle the at Storm's End. No, that's not the Mountain's Men. The that's just the Tyrell cavalry with Connington with Red Ronnet. The Mountain's Men, if you remember in the epilogue, get hired um, by Swift, by Harry Swift, to be his guards. And so we know that at least one of them, Raph the Sweetling, ends up in Bravos in the Mercy sample chapter. Obviously we're concerned where the Mountain's Men are because one, Dunson is on Arya's death list, so we have to have him show up. But two, like characters like Shitmouth, people like, and they'd like to know where Shitmouth is. So, I mean, obviously the Mountain's Men don't all have to be in the same place. Maybe some of them stayed behind with Bonifer Hasty. Maybe some of them, broke off and did their own thing. But for the most part, I think we're supposed to think that as readers that they got hired by Harry Swift. I'm trying to think who's still left. Okay, Dunson. There's one named Aegon, which everybody's forgotten. Doesn't matter. There's Shitmouth, Joss Stillwood. Again, we don't really care too much about Joss. And then one called Tobbit. And that's about it. But the only ones we really care about are Dunson and Shitmouth. I don't even think Tobbit didn't even appear in Feast. And, Joss doesn't really appear in Feast. Aegon doesn't appear in Feast. And that's it. I like with you go through the wiki, and they're like according to semi-canon sources, Dunson followed Red Ronnet to Maidenpool. You're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? But no, I don't think they were with. Because they would have no reason to join the Tyrell cavalry they wouldn't have, if they were to join the Tyrell army, they would be on foot, but they wouldn't be part of the cavalry. I think in the fanfic they're at least Shitmouth, and at least Dunson and Shitmouth are in Bravos, and who really cares about the others? If any point in the first three books could Martin use a glass candle to interfere with events, like Marwyn could have taken control of Sam to kill the other. Um, doing my I started going back into my um, reading through of a Game of Thrones, and it's quite amazing sometimes when characters make just big changes in their personality and do really nuts stuff. And I realized like Catelyn does a lot of really crazy stuff through a Game of Thrones, not just and a Clash of Kings. I'm not just releasing Jaime. People really focus on Jaime. People focus on kidnapping Tyrion, but she has a bunch of just 180s in her decisions. I mean, like, you know, for instance, like spending every moment with Bran and being super worried about him, and then all of a sudden being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna leave Bran and go to King's Landing." Like out of fucking like just complete 180, where you're like, "Oh, could it be glass candles?" Um, the thing is going thinking about the history of glass candles now with like G. Steph's um, analysis of after visiting the Cushing library, how the glass candles were going to be this thing that every maester had, um, which would have just been nuts. I couldn't believe that the glass candles in his original idea would be as powerful as they are now, like going into people's dreams. Maybe, but like every maester having a glass candle, every maester, I mean, the glass candles back then had immortality, just like the werewood. So they were the same thing, right? Immortality and the ability to go into people's like heads and send visions and shit. So like maybe every fucking maester though. It's crazy. Um, but yes. Um, every event we now have, because there's these manipulators in the story, we kind of go, oh, maybe something like this happened. And it's true. Like, was it Marwyn? We don't think that the glass candles are necessarily turned on at that point. Like at the beginning of A Storm of Swords, maybe, but we don't really. I mean, we only hear about the glass candles getting turned on at the beginning of Feast, which would be a couple months later, um, versus like when Sam killed the other. You could stretch it. I mean, you could maybe have it be that, but I mean, the assumption is that like it's Bloodraven or it's time traveling Bran or something, right? Messing with his head, um, rather than. I mean, you do feel like something's messing with uh, with Sam's head. I mean, especially at Craster's Keep with him losing time and all of that. But yeah, the side that with the other, yeah, I guess I don't know. Could it be Marwyn? If Marwyn kept the turning on of the glass candles a secret, and Lazy Leo only found out about it like a couple months later from snooping around and then reveals to everybody. Okay, yeah, I suppose it could be Marwyn. It's because the beginning of A Feast for Crows is just when Leo finds out and tells everyone. It could be that the glass candles have been on for a while. Hmm. Hmm. But not in the fanfic. Fanfic, we had Maester John turn them on, or at least turn the one on. Um. Doom, 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 doom. Let's get a little further. Okay. Oh, I think you mentioned once that you had a friend who was on the wire. I've always wondered, are you able to tell us Who? No worries if not. Yeah, no, my friend is his name's PJ. His stage name is James Ranson. I haven't talked to him in a while. I haven't talked to him in many years. But in high school, I had um here he is. In high school, I had like five friends. He was one of them. But this is, I mean, it was a long time ago. I haven't talked to him in a long, long time. Um, but yeah, he was in It Part Two. He was Inside Man. Um, stuff like that. But uh, you know, um, he has some interesting stories because I haven't talked to him in good. Has it been? It's been over 10 years since I've talked to him actually. But he had some funny stories about like the acting world and stuff even at that point. And I do remember like going to a party with him in Baltimore and like everybody at the party freaking out, like everybody just being like, we walk in and people are like, why is the guy from The Wire here? Because it's Baltimore, everybody's seen The Wire. um and he would get upset just because like he was like, I've done other stuff, why do people only know me for The Wire? That was a long time ago. But he kind of plays the same role. But he's gotten I think he's become like, what's funny is now he's in his mid 40s, but I think he like really started becoming a pretty good actor in his like late 30s. I actually thought that kind of his early stuff was rough. But he's pretty good now. But he's but that's it. PJ James Ranson. Um, but Weird joke because a buddy of mine was super into. This was way back when PJ started getting like he'd gotten the role in The Wire, and his head got a little big at the time. And I remember I had a friend that was complaining about him, and because as one does of their friends. But I remember he asked, or he was like, we were really into Angel for a while, and so he was talking about David Boreanaz. And this is the thing is, you might be like, David Boreanaz, who's David Boreanaz? And the answer is yes, exactly. But David Boreanaz, if you guys remember, is the he was Angel, and he was also like the lead of a show called Bones for many, many years. And he was like, think about the acting hierarchy, right? There's like A-listers, like there's Tom Cruise. And then you go down the ladder, and you go down the ladder, and you get to somebody like David Boreanaz, who David Boreanaz is a really fucking big deal. He was Angel. He was the main character of a show for 5 years, and then was the main character in Bones for how many years? Like, was that another? That was for Bones was on the air for 12 fucking years. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my God. Oh my God. I can't believe Bones was on the air for that long. But he's like, if you asked your mom who David Boreanaz was, she'd be like, I have no fucking clue. Right? So like, go down your list and go, okay, you've got household name actors, and then you go kind of all the way down to somebody that's enormous, David Boreanaz. And still being enormous means no one fucking knows who you are. Like, like your mom doesn't know who David Boreanaz is, right? Like, and then he's like, now think about where PJ is on the chain, right? Like he's way, 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 way down. Like, yes, in Baltimore, if he went to a house party, somebody at the party has seen The Wire. But like, it's not like he's walking the streets and people are are going after him, and he's not stopping traffic. Um, if you need to build the best small council for the good of the and good and best overall governance, who would you pick? Oh God. These are these things like, have we even met any characters that are that great? I mean, there's Pycelle. Like, I have no reason to really. I mean, like Pycelle, he's a little biased towards the Lannisters, obviously, but Pycelle, for the most part, like, is going for stability and the good of the realm. And he's a fairly reasonable and intelligent person. And then after that, who really cares? I don't think like I don't think Robert Baratheon's small council is that bad. Varys is obviously horrible, but like when you start thinking about the rest of them, John Aaron as Hand, did Stannis do anything bad as like Master of Laws? Like we don't hear anything. We don't. I mean, he tried to close down brothels. Um, was Renly bad? Obviously Littlefinger is stealing from it was horrible. So I would start with Robert's small council and remove Littlefinger and put in Giles Rosby, because we have no reason to think that there was anything wrong with Giles Rosby either. Giles Rosby seems perfectly fine. And then just get rid of Varys. And I don't know who you'd have instead as a Master of Whisperers. we've never met we've never had a Master of Whispers who like we kind of who has not been an absolutely horrible human being. Right? Like we've got Laurie Strong, Qyburn, Varys. Like who else do we go with? No one else deals with that and is a good person. So I guess we need somebody, but man, they're all pretty bad. And and then the Lord Commander, I don't think anybody cares about who the Lord Commander is, as long as they're not Kristen Cole. Your Lord Commander's doing fine. As long as he's not Kristen Cole. For the good of the realm. But there wasn't, Robert's small council wasn't bad except for Littlefinger and Varys. So just replace Littlefinger with Giles Rosby. Nothing wrong with Giles Rosby. That guy's great. Too bad he's gone. Hey, Preston just finished House of the Dragon. It was definitely seemed like a massive drop in quality. I thought the series in season 1 was incredible, and no character in season 2 came remotely close. That is true. I mean, I would say that, and I did this in my review of House of the Dragon. Like, I have a lot of problems with season 1 of House of the Dragon, but if I would say the one thing that's really incredible about the entire season is the Viserys actor, the Viserys plot, and how that all comes together. The entire wound that wouldn't heal kind of situation. I think there are actors that are on the same level as Viserys. I do. I don't know if they were necessarily given the best material. Like, I think the actors are fine. Like the actor that plays, Aegon is incredible. I think he does a really great job in season 2, but his material is a little inconsistent. And so, but you are right. There's no story where you're like, that was a really great story. Like even the ones that like pull up my heartstrings a little bit, like Corlys, they're not consistent. They drag. They're like, where are they really going with it? But is Corlys's story the best of season 2, or would you say Kristen Cole's like? I feel sad from PTSD is the best. I don't know. I mean, not much to choose from. Not much to choose from. um, should Ghost have a point of view chapter given Dance prologue? That's the plan in the fanfic. The plan in the fanfic is to have Ghost be the epilogue right now. I can't think of anybody better, but who knows what happens. We're talking about events that go that writing that prologue is going to be years down the line. Let's be super ambitious and say it's 3 years away at least. But yes, I think that writing things from a wolf point of view is just, I think it's just a necessary thing. But also you got to start thinking about, are these dire wolves going to start dying? In the show, they killed Summer off when Bran escaped. And yes, there's Arya and Nymeria, but you can kind of get into that head, but we're kind of left with Ghost as being the only kind of like wolf point of view. And that's just something I don't see that being lost. Like there has to be an occasional, like, this is what the wolf is smelling and thinking kind of thing. That's just so part of the story. At least starting with Clash and going on, right? Because I'm like, they do it a bunch with Bran in both Clash, Storm and Dance. I mean, I guess you could keep Summer alive, but I don't know. It's just not the same. Not the same. But yeah, the plan is to have Ghost be a point of view. If you're gonna have like the second life thing of Jon. Hello from Maryland. Have you seen Deadwood? I think it's one of the greatest TV shows in history and doesn't get any love. I have not, but I thought everybody loved the fact that like they finally did the Deadwood movie that like brought it all together. But I never watched it. But of course, everybody loves Deadwood because it had Ian McShane in it, and everybody loved. Oh, and everybody loves Timothy Oliphant too. So I'm trying to think if anybody. How many seasons was it on? It was on for a long time. Only 3 seasons? Huh. I thought it actually would have had more. But yeah, didn't they do like some movie to bring it all together? Yeah, the film. Oh my God. And the film was, wow. So Deadwood, season 1, 12 episodes, 2004. Season 2, 12 episodes, 2005. Season 3, 12 episodes, 2006. Then 13 fucking years go by. 13 years, it rings a bell. And then they get a film to close it all up. I hope that movie was everything that you hope that you wanted it to be. It's kind of like how we got Serenity. I mean, that's the best we could hope for with Firefly. But I mean, I think the people that watch Deadwood freaking love it. But oh look, somebody wrote it as one of the greatest American shows of all time. But I've never seen it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Theory: Ned's bones were intercepted by Victarion while he held Moat Cailin. Ned's bones are in Marine. I have heard this one before, and it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible, though he doesn't. Though Victarion never specifically mentions, like stopping Hallis Malin, and getting a hold of anything, and it being like left in the on his ship or anything like that. But it's something that George R. Martin could put in there if he wanted on like what happens to Ned's bones, that they got picked up by Victarion and they're in Marine. Um, he just yeah, just it's only that he didn't mention Hallis Malin. Though that would be funny though if you just start saying like, oh, and then we had this one thrall, this and then like this we call like you just start like seeding thrall Hal. There's some thrall named Hal like on the ship, and you don't think about it for a while, and then you find out that like Ned's bones are there. But I don't know what I don't know what Ned's bones are going to be like why they were even mentioned again, what the hope is for them. Um, are there memories in the bones? Can they be absorbed into the werewood if they're finally buried and all of Ned's secrets about the Tower of Joy like come rushing in or something like that? There's very few people alive that even care about Ned's bones. So it's but I do think it's a little fun. I'm just trying to think of anybody. See, this is very different than say like Gilly showing up in Slaver's Bay. Like when I talk about like the theory of like Gilly was left on the ship when Marwyn left, like Gilly like being in Slaver's Bay is super significant because one, she has news of the others, and two, she has the final request of Mormont, G.R. Mormont, to his son that he should join the Watch. Those are both like very significant things that can come from Gilly ending up in Slaver's Bay. So then the thing is like, okay, yes, Ned's bones could end up in Marine, but who in Marine would give a shit about Ned's bones? That's the thing. Or who in Marine would give a shit about Hallis Malin? I don't know. Like what's the whole significance of them? Because he's Hallis Malin wasn't even in the room when Kat reveals her like all the secrets, right? He like leaves in a Game of Thrones, so maybe he eventually found out all of this information. He travels with her for a while, but who in Slaver's Bay would care about Hallis? I don't know. I mean, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. All the timing would work out. It would be fine. Like the bones could end up there. I just don't know. I mean, except for like a haha like fans, Hallis Malin the thrall is now in is now here in Marine. Besides that, I don't know what else it would be. What other use it would have? Though it's a fun thing. Maybe thrall Hal in the story in the fanfic. Why didn't Ned tell Kat about Jon's parents? Well, so I did a lot of thinking about this for a long time, and so I remember taking this way back. I remember when I first started my channel, I'd done the Pink Letter Mystery and I'd done the Dornish Master Plan. And after doing the Dornish Master Plan is when like people started getting into my channel quite a bit. And a lot of people said like, oh, you need to do R plus L equals J next. You need to do R plus L equals J. And, I reread the Ned story, like thinking that I was going to find like clear evidence of R plus L equals J, like what was going on with Bloodraven and what he was trying to manipulate Ned to do and things like that. And none of it made sense. Like none of it made sense on like, why is Ned having various dreams? Like Ned is ready to go home and leave King's Landing. And then he has a vision of the Tower of Joy and then decides to stay. And, shouldn't have it been the reverse? Shouldn't he have wanted to go back to Winterfell and talk to Jon if he had a vision about the Tower of Joy? Like, why would the vision make him stay? And all sorts of different stuff like that just didn't make sense. Now, looking back at all of that, I'm like, well, when George R. R. Martin wrote A Game of Thrones, he was gardening. He didn't really know what was going on. He didn't even know about Bloodraven yet. Like he just was throwing visions around and hoping that they would make sense later. Um, so, but at the time when I was trying to find something logical on why Ned didn't tell Kat about John's parents, the idea was, okay, well, if John is the son of Brandon and Ashara Dane, trueborn, like they were married in front of a heart tree. John, through primogenitor, John is the John is the true is actually the Lord of Winterfell, you know, and so like a, a Brandon plus Ashara like wedding and child would make sense that Ned would keep it a secret because the entire Tully Stark alliance relies on the fact that that a Tully child is going to get Winterfell, and finding out that some random like Dane, like some random Stark Dane child is really going to get it would throw everything off. And keep in mind that John is like Kat specifically fears John's like claim over Robb. This is well, not necessarily John over Robb, but she specifically fears John's children's claim over Robb's children's claim, which is, but nonetheless, the claim thing is an important thing in for Kat. Now, if you accept R plus L equals J, like why is he keeping it from Kat? Well, I mean, I guess in this situation, he just thinks that Kat would have loose lips. I mean, again, R plus L equals J doesn't really make very much sense to me. In the show, the reason Ned keeps it a secret is because he thinks that Robert's going to murder John because John is a Targaryen baby. But we spend the entire book exploring Robert's personality to find out that Robert isn't that person. But then people say, okay, well, maybe Robert isn't that person, but Ned thinks that Robert's that person. And it's like, no, Ned clearly doesn't think Robert's that person. Like through the whole story, he's shocked. He's shocked and angry when Robert wants to assassinate Dany. So like, why would Ned want to keep the secret at all? So when you say like, why didn't Ned tell Kat about John's parents? The thing is like, I don't think it even makes sense that Ned is keeping it a secret, period. Okay. So like, so I don't think there's much, I don't think that R plus L equals J, even accepting that it's George R. R. Martin's plan because it was put in the show and all of that. Like even accepting that, I don't think it makes much sense that Ned kept it a secret. And so this is a specific secret. Why would he keep the secret from Kat? I don't know why he's keeping it a secret, period. Let alone from Kat. But if you're gonna go with the belief that like Ned actually really did think that Robert was going to kill John, then it's about Kat like not having loose lips. Like you don't tell Kat because, you know, I don't know, the women gossip or whatever. You know, they're just he doesn't want to tell anybody because the secret might get out. That's the only thing you can kind of go with, that Ned really did think that John was going to get killed by Robert, and he wanted to keep this a secret from everyone. And so there's nothing really special about Kat. She's just another person, you know. So, if you plan the 5-year gap after the War of the Five Kings, then Dany invades. Thus, Feast for Crows Dance with Dragons takes place in the beginning of the planned 5-year. Not all. Gap is still to come. Feast for Crows Dance with Dragons crammed with stuff that didn't work for him as flashback. I think so I always had in this the belief that no, like the 5 year gap was just going to be there, and then yeah, some things you might get to in flashback, like um, Ironborn stuff, or Brienne's journey to find Sansa and stuff like that. Um, but that certain stuff, there's a clear stopping point at the end at the Storm of Swords. Like Arya has entered her training. Dany is ruling a city. Jon is Lord Commander. Like you have some Tyrion is out of the picture. Um, Tommen is king. You know, all of these things people can grow up, get older, all sort. Myrcella's and Dorne, all this sort of stuff. Um, Sansa is living in the Vale. All this stuff can go. The big problem is like the Ironborn and um, the Ironborn and Brienne are really the big problem points of the 5 year gap. Um, but yeah, I see what you're saying, Moon Man. You're saying that like all the stuff that he needed to get to in the 5 year gap can still be to come, because um, if he wanted to do another gap. But I think he it's very clear that the Jon story and the Dany story specifically were about getting all of that experience and growth into those characters, um, and then having the events happen, like Dany leaving Marine, Jon getting stabbed. Um, but I just don't think at this point there's going to be a gap at all. I can't. I don't necessarily think there's much use for a gap anymore. Oh yeah, 5 year gap would have had like Stannis chilling at the wall for a good 5 years. Um, they would have just been in the heart of winter at that point, right? Like winter would have been going for, even assuming fall is like 2 years, like they'd be in like 3 years of winter or something, finally getting to the point of starving and stuff like that. Um, Benjen could be a hard home. Yeah, I just don't know what he's doing at hard home. I mean, our map of like where Craster's Keep is and everything has him heading a different direction, but like he could turn and go to Hardhome. I just don't know what he'd do at Hardhome. Hey, Lord Mormon, how's everybody's new nephew? I suppose you're right that like Benjen returning to the wall would cause a lot of people to be like how there's chaos at the wall. Like Benjen would be the one person that could actually come in and just take over the wall and be like, the wall's mine. Like, what are you guys doing? No, let's get this shit go. Let's get this shit together. Um, in many ways, you could do a Benjen returns to the wall and takes over quickly, in the same way that like Aegon enters the Seven Kingdoms and takes over quickly. Um, that could be a thing, but the thing is, the others are attacking at the same moment. But like Benjen coming in and being like, "Fine, everything, like just take control, power." Like, um, that could be something. That could be something. I mean, I know you just some dude is like was kind of making a joke, but you're stumbling on something that's intriguing. That Benjen could come in and be a competent Lord Commander who immediately takes control of the wall and brings everything together quite quickly. But I don't know like what use that would also have, considering like the others are coming and the wildlings are coming, the Weeper is coming and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, uh, uh. Still looking for good Benjen ideas. Maybe Benjen has a connection to the friendly side of the others. That'd be interesting if there's like other factions, like not like the others are not unified, that there's actually like good others that are like, what are you guys doing? You guys are going crazy. What you guys doing? And that he's contacting like the good others. Um, Benjen is the leader of the others. He's the Night King. Well, that'd be interesting. That'd be something. Yeah. If having Ben John go fuck this, I quit. Having a sympathetic Lord Commander would be a thing. Benjen Lord Commander. I mean, he would probably just be Lord Commander. um, Benjen is Kuramo. I mean, have they ever been? They have not been in the same place at the same time. It's true. um, uh, uh. Benjen, Bin Jen. He was Jen Jojen. Oh, Benjen is Jojen the whole time. Also, like, what to do with Stone Snake? And Bran is going to kill Bloodraven. We have to, if Bran wants to save Jojen and Mira from being strapped to the root system and becoming husks. I'm a little torn. Like, I think for the fanfic, I have an idea of what's going to happen to Bloodraven, but I have played with the idea that Bran needs to be the one to kill Bloodraven in the sense that he needs to be the one that kills God. Like God needs to be dead, and he needs to like kill God. In the same way, that Jamie kills Aerys or whatever. Though I came up with and I don't want to give away, but I came up with a pretty cool plot for the Bran 2 chapter that is something different, that goes a different way than Bran specifically being the one to kill Bloodraven. But God dies. So God dies in the end. God is dead, but Bran isn't necessarily the murderer in this. But I do think it fits somewhat thematically for Bran to be the one to kill Bloodraven in many, many ways. White Walker hostility due to Bran not allowing them to live. He manipulates time without regard. Time traveling Bran is morally gray character, oppressing the White Walker's future in the world. It depends on like who the White Walkers are. Like obviously in the show they've made the White Walkers straight up evil. And I'm torn on that because like I sat next to a woman who asked George R. Martin point blank, like, are the White Walkers just plain evil? And he'd already made statements like that the White Walkers are close to global warming and things like this, or climate change. And she asked him, like, are the White Walkers evil? And he said, you're gonna have to keep on reading, as if like he hadn't decided if they were evil or not. Or it's an intriguing thing to keep left unknown. In the show, they're just evil. They're just death. And the themes of the show are close enough to George R. Martin's other writing that I'm like, those plot points could totally be George. But you could also take this as like the kind of funny joke. I recently saw the guy from The Office and Silicon Valley, the tall, skinny guy that played Jared, and he was doing a bit where he was talking about the witches of Salem, and he's like, "You guys got to understand, like Salem was like overrun by witches, like, and the proof's in the pudding. Like, there aren't any witches anymore in Massachusetts, and they were overrun before. So like they and the guy was like, but one could argue that like these weren't witches, and they were." And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're victim blaming the people of Salem. Like, we're victim blaming the others. But no, I mean, I do think it's an interesting uh, thought that maybe the others aren't evil. Because the show established them as pure evil so long ago now, because it's been so many years since they've been revealed as just plain evil, that it's hard to even like go back and being like, well, maybe they're not evil, you know? Like we all just kind of accept that there's a Night King and that they're plain evil and stuff like that. Even though that hasn't ever actually been established, you know? It's not even established that John's coming back to life. Things like that. Hi, Preston. It's Always Sunny in King's Landing. Alistair Thorne is mocked when he takes the undead hand by Tyrion at court. George R. Martin is writing for the others and Winter to make it to King's Landing as karma, right? I do not know. I kind of assumed early on that because of Dany's visions that the final battle was going to be at the Trident. She would be like Rhaegar, and that you're close to the God's Eye, and any events that might happen at the God's Eye, and that would be there, and we wouldn't need to go to King's Landing. One could though have plots where things go to King's Landing, and have the others blown up by wildfire or something like that. Who knows? But as for them being as some sort of karma, the thing is that specific plot of Alistair Thorne traveling all the way down to King's Landing with the hand and then heading all the way back up. The only thing that it actually does in the story is Tyrion empties the cells and gives them to Alistair Thorne, and those happen to be the religious fanatics. And so I joke about, people that watch my channel know that I joke about the missing religious fanatics all the time as this like dropped plot. But this is part of it. Part of it is like the incredible story of Alistair Thorne being going to King's Landing with the hand and coming back with recruits. And those are supposed to be the religious fanatics. He even has a conversation with Tyrion where he's like, "You got what you wanted. Like, what are you talking about? I gave you the really, So in the end, like, I don't know if we're supposed to read that scene as King's Landing doing something wrong, because in the end, like, Tyrion gives him what he wants. Like Tyrion does the right thing. It's just that we kind of forgot about the story forgets about those recruits. They're just never mentioned. But it's the religious. The religious fanatics, and I'm talking about like the first religious fanatics, not the sparrows, the ones that were going crazy because it was like Tyrion thinks that they were going crazy because it was the 300th anniversary of Aegon's landing. That was the thing. It's important to remember that Tyrion is like 24. I think, yeah, that's about right. I'm trying to remember. He is young, and when we see Peter Dinklage, we think he's old. He's 27 in A Dance with Dragons, which means he would have been about 20, 25 at the beginning of the story. But yeah, he's young, and I'm trying to remember, like, let's see, Peter Dinklage's age, because he gives us oh my god, Peter Dinklage is 55, which means when Game of Thrones ended, Game of Thrones ended in 2018. 2019. So when Game of Thrones ended, He was 50. Yeah. So when it started, Peter, it started in what, 2011? So, man, that's he was, yeah. That's big. That's a big age difference. I mean, they aged up everybody, but that's a big age difference. um, another assassination attempt. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like the public has such a short attention span that no one cares. Like no one, like I guarantee by Wednesday no one will care. Like Trump's first assassination attempt was televised with like pictures of him bloody with his hand in the air, and they were like, "Oh my god, all of these incredible pictures. Oh god." We don't have anything like that for this. Nothing. Nothing. So no one's gonna care. No one's gonna, like, the public has such a short attention span. No one cares. So in 3 days, it's nothing. Um. So. um. What do you think about the parallels from older to newer point of views? Ned, Aegon both starting offering a life to the old gods drowned god and forfeiting theirs in the end. Sansa, Cersei both starting from opposite sides of power, etc. Something there. Hello, hello. You wanted to talk about assassination attempts?
I was going to join, but there's some new info that came out on the guy that tried to do it.
Uh-huh.
He voted for Trump in 2016.
Yeah, I saw that. And then he became like a Ukraine dude. He became like super pro Ukraine.
Something like that. And he for this election, he wanted Haley and Vivek on the same ticket. And did you see what Elon's trying to do right now?
Oh God! Well,
Elon suspended the guy's account as to hide the fact that he's a Republican. That's Elon's game.
Oh,
right now.
So he's a Republican again. Oh, yeah, I thought he was going to be clearly. I thought he was going to be clearly a Democrat this time.
No. He's no. It's
a Republican again. Great.
Oh, wow.
Again, I don't think it matters. People are gonna believe it's some left wing guy. The same thing happened with the first guy. The first guy was fairly conservative, but didn't have much of an online presence. But they still were still they made up the story that he was left winger. But yeah, so you're saying that this guy wanted Haley? Interesting.
He wanted a Vivek and Haley ticket.
That's interesting. That's funny. Oh well, but again, I don't think it's gonna make much difference. Man, that's fast. That's fast information that they get everything on the CI.
But I fucking love Elon coming in and suspending the guy's account so you can't see his past tweets. Piece of shit. Of shit, Elon.
Of course, Elon is one of the worst human beings on the planet.
Before I bounce, can I give you my quick update on Battlestar Galactica? Because there's nothing else for us
Oh
to
God,
watch.
yes. No. So as you guys know, Carmine has been watching Battlestar Galactica. One of the biggest disappointments for like super fans.
Don't go into detail, please.
I was a super fan. I was a super fan of it. I loved the show.
Homie, I'm going to tell you this right now.
Oh yeah.
I'll try to keep it very vague for anybody else. The beginning of season 3, absolute garbage. But the ending, I'm heading towards the end right now. I'm not done with season 3. I'm towards the end. The ending is great, and I realized why. Whoever in that writer's room thought it would be a great idea to remove the mystery of what the Cylons were and what's going on in that operation. That person never needs to write another script for as long as they live. I would say they need to go to Gitmo, because I did not have the greatest threat to humanity in a sci-fi show being a bunch of sexy robots in a sex dungeon in space as on my bingo card. And that's kind of what they were. They were just a bunch of like sexy people in a giant spaceship that command robot henchmen. That's pretty much what's running that operation.
Yeah. So you are at the point of the story where everyone is going nuts about the Final Five mystery. Yes?
I hate that so much. You could tell it was like corporate ass marketing. It's so bad. And do me a favor, I love you,
Yeah.
but you sometimes slip in casual spoilers
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not
encounters.
gonna. I'm not gonna slip any casual spoilers here. But the final five storyline, they didn't plan that,
Okay.
so it's not planned from the beginning. So when you find out who the final five are, it's not like you can go back in time and be like, oh, they were that was a clue there. That was a clue there. No, if you went back in time, you'd be like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. That doesn't make any fucking sense. That doesn't make any fucking sense. So
Yeah.
the final five thing, and keep in mind, I was on this train. We were all on the fucking train. We were all on the
Mm.
fucking train talking about who the final five and the final one, the 13th, and oh my god, we were all like, who is it? Oh my god, this is so fucking incredible. What is the on the watchtower like mean? Oh my god, like what is it? Nothing. Like such a disappointment. Such a disappointment.
There's
Um,
so the moment the Cylons stop being at the front and center, then it gets good again, right? So, and I hate that because that was one of the best parts about the earlier seasons is the Cylon constantly assaulting them mentally, fit like just who's a spy and who's
yeah,
not, who's really
yeah.
like that was so great. And now they've removed they took the veil off, and it's just sexy robots in space. I just don't care,
It is because
and
one of the fascinating things the premise and world of Battlestar was so intriguing. Like when somebody described to me first, like, okay, the Cylon, they look like people and they're indistinguishable from people, but there's many copies of them. And when they die, they get resurrected and in a bath. And so they never really go away. And you're like, this is
in the
this
hot
is
tub.
intriguing. And they took all that away. Like
Uh,
eventually you get to the point where there's only one of each Cylon. And eventually you get to the point where the baths are taken away. Right. So like
yeah, good. Which is
all of a
spoiler, by
sudden,
the
like
way,
everything
but yeah,
intriguing about like this, like what makes the Cylons Cylons is taken away. Um,
it's
it's
just,
yeah.
it's almost. I want to look this up, but I don't because this is how I accidentally spoiled myself with Westworld season one, the best
Mm.
twist ever with the Man in Black, and yeah, I kind of want to look up if the Baltor Gaius Baltor actor was a writer on the show because he has the best moments. He legitimately has the best moments where he just has threesomes with all the sexy robots for like the entire season. Come on, my man, how are you not in the writers' room? Come
Right.
on.
Yeah.
Lucy
Yeah.
Lawless and the blonde chick? Come on. Like,
Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody's boning everybody in the show. Like people that were just like, oh my God, those two boned. Yes.
when
Like,
you told me, as I was about to start this, you were telling me about Starbuck and how she drives all the guys crazy. You were
mm,
not fucking kidding. She's driving my ass crazy. Like, what do you want? What do you want? What is this? Why are you doing this? And she is probably the most realistic character because I've met women like this. I've met women who just
oh yeah.
drive you insane with their bullshit. And this woman specifically, fucking Starbuck.
Well, I mean,
You love to
she's
hate
not
her, but you love her.
she's the rogue prince.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, dude, she's Damon. She's
She's
100% Damon
Damon.
Targaryen.
She's just
Oh my
Damon.
god.
Yeah.
I just
Very,
got done with the
very,
episode.
very, very inconsistently written. Um, the
Yeah.
the actor does her dandiest to pull it off, and she does for the most part. It falls apart near the end. At some point, you're just like, "Oh my god, this makes no sense."
Yeah.
Um, but man, oh man, like Katie Sackhoff is. I mean, Katie Sackhoff carries the whole fucking season. I mean, carries the whole series, and then the actor that plays Baltar is also very good. But like Katie Sackhoff, I mean, coming out of Battlestar, is Katie Sackhoff the only one that really like went on to do much?
I know not James Earl Jones, James Edward Olmos had somewhat of a decent career before then. But after
Yeah, I
Battlestar, I don't
mean,
think he did anything.
I've seen the actress that plays Athena also kind of goes. I think she was in Hawaii Five O, but they don't they don't really. I mean, people really just kind of appreciated Katie Sackhoff's like performance, and she is incredible. But man, like you are seeing the show going downhill, and it is going to start going downhill fast,
We'll
really
see,
fast.
because like the show, one of the cool things about the show is that they're actively running from this threat. And then what I love the most, beyond like in the first season, beyond the Cylons chasing them and fucking with them, is they have to contend with running out of
Yeah.
food and water and fuel.
Mhm.
And oh no, there's like conflicts amongst the people, because these are all people from all over the place come together. The most recent episode I really liked was when Hilo has to deal with the Sagittarians and their whole resistance to vaccinating themselves, and because of religious bullshit.
Yeah, I'm one of the things that a lot of fans, including me, were upset about is that they fight amongst themselves so much where you're like, dude, there's like 50,000 of you left. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah.
go 1 week without fucking like trying to kill yourselves. Okay. Like, go 1 fucking week. Like, they're all like, we need to have democracy right now. And you're like, you don't think you could have like martial law for like a few years? We need to have democracy right now. Like, there's only 50,000 of you left. Like, come on. Like,
The frustrating one, the episode I'm on right now, is the one where they're contemplating a workers' strike because
yeah.
they want to unionize. And
Hmm.
because Baltar, somehow his lawyer is sneaking out like writings, bro, you're a traitor to humanity, and your lawyer is somehow on your side. This is why I'm wondering, like, is this motherfucker a writer in the writer's room giving himself all
There's a
this
lot
cool
of weird
shit?
stuff. There's an episode where Baltar gets upset that number
Wait a minute!
six is
Don't
getting
tell don't don't
abused.
don't don't
This
tell
was this
me.
was,
Don't.
yeah, this was years ago. This is like episode. This is like season two.
Okay.
But there like the one where he thinks where he gives her the nuclear weapon.
Oh, that was, what the fuck was that, bro?
Yeah, you're just like, why would any human being do that? You know. But anyway, there's a lot of weird. Look, it's about to get really bad. Don't
Nah,
don't. The thing is, I'm keeping your expectations low, so you're gonna finish and be like, it was okay.
we'll
But the
see.
rest of us, all of our expectations were so fucking high because the early seasons are so good, and they're building up, and they're just like, we have a plan. We have a plan for this. We call stuff the plan. Everybody's talking about the Cylons plan. We're gonna reveal it all, and it's gonna blow your fucking mind. And we're all like, oh my god, it's gonna blow our fucking mind. And then the fucking season happened, and it was the worst thing ever. And we were all disappointed, and we all pretended like Battlestar Galactica didn't happen. And that's what's gonna happen, man. Keep your expectations low.
We'll see. All
We
right,
will.
I'm gonna bounce. I'll let you get to the super chat. Sorry, Everett Wilkins, and your yeah, but no, real quick. There's gonna be a super chat coming up. I don't know if you got to it yet. You have to do this about Victarion intercepting Ned's bones
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
Ned's
talked about it some. Yeah.
Yeah, please. I want Ned's bones in like Marine, and somehow
Right.
Tyrion
No,
has
no.
them.
It's certainly logistically completely possible. I'm
I
just
like
trying
that.
to think of good reasons for the bones to be there besides haha fans, Hallis Mullen and the bones are in Marine. Like what like would the bones have a purpose or use? I mean maybe Hallis Mullen would, you know, but it's very easy to be like, okay, after the battle is done, like they captured one of Victarion's thralls, and it's Hallis Mullen. But
Hmm.
what what can he reveal? What use would he have? What's the function of him? But I don't know. But what can the bones provide is the real thing. So, other
Hmm.
than haha, isn't it hilarious that the bones are here in Slayer's Bay? But
Maybe like it's this. He intercepted like a box, and he's just never opened it, and he thinks there's treasure inside, but it's just Ned Stark's bones.
yeah, like Tyrion's
Something like that.
dragon books that end up on Sam's ship and down in Old Town, they would have use in Slaver's Bay. Gilly would have use in Slaver's Bay. Like some things have clear use in Slaver's Bay. I just don't know what Hallis Mullen's bones would do. But yeah, I mean, logistically, yeah, they could totally be there because Victarion could have easily captured Hallis Mullen and his fucking bones. Um, anyway, back to what do you think the parallels are for the older and the newer points of view? Um, so George does put a lot of these, besides like simultaneous paralleling, which obviously happens with, say, the Battle of Ice and Battle of Fire. We do have paralleling from the stuff to the past to stuff in the later story. So, for instance, Dany in Marine has a scene where different uh, different Astapori come in telling stories, and she doesn't really like understand or believe them correctly, and it's very clearly the same scene of Ned in a Game of Thrones where the Riverland peasants come in and start talking and stuff like this. So I mean these things do happen, and obviously like the people getting stuck in people getting stuck in dungeons over and over and over again is the same as like Ned in his dungeon and all of this, like um and so this happens over and over again. But I'm trying to think like specifically with Ned and Aeron. Um, the thing is Ned doesn't think about the old gods very much. He thinks about them occasionally, but he doesn't think about them too much. While Aeron thinks about the drowned god a fucking lot. um, I mean, he thinks about the old gods. um, what when he there's a question of like he meets Cersei in the Godswood so that his gods are watching. I think that happens. Um, he has various lines like "May the gods forgive me" and stuff. um, but there's not. It's not certainly not as explicit. If it exists, his thinking about the gods, it's not something that can it's not something like with Aeron. um and I don't know if Ned really offers himself to the old gods. um I don't know if Aeron is really offering himself to the gods either. Like he wants to die, I guess. He wants to meet the sea and go to the Drowned God Hall, but I don't know if that parallels there. Um, Sansa, Cersei, both starting from opposite sides of power. I think definitely Sansa Cersei. You're supposed to think that Sansa has learned something from Cersei in the from her time. They make a bigger deal of it in the show, I think, but I'm trying to remember um, what she specifically says. Let's see. Does she bring her up here? Cersei. Maybe it's just something more mentioned in the show. Lysa Arryn frightened her more than as much as Queen Cersei had. Cersei thinks she's sly, but she's predictable. Maybe that was just a show thing. I'm trying to remember if there was anything where she says I learned from Cersei or something. I mean, certainly there's some thematic elements like, um, you know, the use of um, the use of femininity in their agency and stuff like this. Things that Cersei uses and things that Sansa uses. That we start seeing at the end of the Sansa sample chapter. I'm trying to think of some other like more obvious ones. Like there's stuff with people opening their third eyes. Aeron has a lot of parallels to Bran and Arya and to Daenerys with opening their eyes. The same with like Arya going blind, paralleling Bran going, being in the crypts and being blind and opening their eyes and all of a sudden being able to skin change their wolves and things like this. Um, Brienne's journey to Cracklaw Point and everything quite parallels like Bran's journey north of the Wall. She ventures out to Cracklaw Point where there's a werewood at the end, and they're talking about the squishers, and the squishers are a stand-in for the others and things like this. And so I mean, certainly these things happen, but I'm just trying to think about like Ned and Aeron, because Ned doesn't think about his gods that much. Like everybody just like later, yes, John describes Ned as being religious, but Ned himself doesn't sit there like thinking about them too much, While Aeron does, or like Sansa. I mean, Sansa might be closer to Cersei in how they handle power, but how they kind of gain power. But Sansa's just, it's hard to think of them as being similar because Sansa like does not have the arrogance and insanity of Cersei. But of course, everything is there, right? Like everything, you can always like find something there if you want, Just because I don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. Do you think George will leave notes on how he would have resolved the second and third conflicts? I think that he has an outline that he gave to Dan and Dave. I think that certainly exists. I don't know if he has many notes beyond that. Like, HBO made him make an outline. He's not one like, and his original publisher made him make an outline, but I'm not sure if he himself makes too many outlines. And so I don't know if he has like, he does describe having notes. He does, but I don't know like if they're notes on how the story will end or anything like that in that sense. Like I think he has notes on like, oh, the history of this is, oh, I wrote a little thing on, this random thing on this one moment in history here, but I don't know if he has the story planned out. And the people that made him do it, Game of Thrones, like he had and even then he didn't supply a written version. He went to a hotel room and he sat down with Dan and Dave and he told them what would happen and they took notes. So I don't know if he has notes like on how everything will end. It's but yeah. I mean, you'd want that, right? So that I mean, I don't know if there'd ever be a Christopher Tolkien kind of character like who'd be able to go through and piece things together on what he wanted and stuff like that. But George R. R. Martin is just not Tolkien. They approach writing very differently. Oh, these coughs. Are you concerned about multipolarity and the dollar? No, not for the most part. I mean, a lot of people. There's a lot of strange conspiracy theories about like, oh, the world is completely different now that we got rid of the gold standard, and nothing is based on anything. Value isn't based on anything in the world. But the thing is, like, the gold standard is no different from any of that. Like, gold is effectively worthless too. I mean, there's plenty of gold in the world, in truth. The whole center of the earth is made of gold. Granted, there's like some slight utility to gold in the sense that it can be like used in various scientific research reasons and stuff. Like there needs to be a gold foil they're shooting particles through or whatever. But gold for the most part is worthless. And the dollar is fundamentally worthless. Like it doesn't matter that that the gold standard is gone. I mean, it matters in the sense that we now don't have to have a big stash of gold at Fort Knox to back everything up. But, you know, power resides where people think it resides. People think the dollar has value. We all use the dollar. There's very little chance that the dollar is going to crash or anything like that. And if it does, you got the euro. It doesn't matter. So I'm not so concerned about, I'm not really concerned about multipolarity or anything like that, or there being many currencies. There should be many currencies. That has to do with, you know, so you can actually have fiscal and monetary policy within a nation. One of the downsides of the euro is the fact that you can't enact specific countrywide monetary policy because the entire, you know, they have a central bank. So like if Greece needs to do something to you know, if Greece needs to print money or have inflation to make their exports more competitive and reduce the amount of debt that they have, they can't do it because they're linked with the rest of Europe. So no, I'm not concerned at all. I mean, we got rid of the gold standard in the 70s. We haven't had it for over 50 years. Everything's been going fine. What, you know, other people start bringing up like cryptocurrencies and things like this. And is that going to change stuff? And, you know, I used to think that cryptocurrencies had a future. I now just think cryptocurrencies are just the biggest joke, and all of them will go away. Like I don't see any use for them. That's my feeling about them. I don't trust them. They have it's just gambling. But you know, this grift of cryptocurrencies is just going to be around for, I guess, for a long time. There's other things that concern me more. I just can't believe. Oh God, did I talk about this last week that I turned on ESPN for the first time in years? I haven't watched TV in a long time, right? Because, you know, we all have the internet and streaming, right? So but I was at the gym and they had ESPN on. It was the first time I'd seen ESPN, like Sports Center, you know, in 10 years. It's all just fucking gambling now. It's all fucking gambling. They talk about the sport, like who they think they're going to win. And then they start talking about the spread. And then they say, oh, this is brought to you by, and it's some online gambling site. And then they cut to commercial and it's some fucking online gambling site. And it's like, holy shit. Like what the fuck happened to sports? When did sports just become 100% gambling? And of course, like ESPN like co-owns, they have like investments in these online gambling systems. And then I find out that like Nate Silver, the guy who was in charge of 538 for a long time, I don't know how much his association with 538 still exists, but like this guy used to be the stats guy that everybody listened to. And now he has invested in political gambling and is now giving people like polls and his perspective on the election when he has an investment in political gambling. Like, holy, like what the fuck happened? That kind of stuff concerns me more. Like crypto and gambling and all of this other like fake industries that are clear grifts that are now mainstream. That worries me more. I don't really care about there being many currencies or the US dollar not having a gold standard. Why would Harry the Heir marry Sansa knowing the ramifications? it's, Keith, you're bringing up a uh, you're bringing up a very, very um, uh, important point that I think that when George originally wrote the story and he put the stain of bastardy on people, and then later he needed to come up with some reason for Sansa to somehow be on the story, that all of a sudden everything had to shift around, like that Jon Snow being Ned Stark's bastard, his life is worthless, so worthless that he joins the Night's Watch. Like that's our premise. It's the fucking premise of the goddamn story. That being a bastard is, you have no future and your only hope is to join the Night's Watch. Like that's how bad things are. And then we find out in A Storm of Swords that no, he was actually going to be given a fucking holdfast. Holy fuck. And then we get to the Winds of Winter, and no, bastards, they can actually marry like the fucking high lords of the realm. Like Harry the Heir is going to be the ruler of the Vale, and he was going to marry a bastard, but it's okay because she's the daughter of the Lord Paramount of the Trident. And it's like, well, Jon Snow was in the same fucking position. Why weren't they marrying Jon Snow off to some highborn, Frey or whoever? No, like clearly, like it's a retcon. Um, so, but going beyond like the very clear retcon on the state of bastards in our story, um, why would Harry the Heir marry Sansa knowing the ramifications? The idea is that he wants money from, or he wants money, and he might think she's hot, or something like that. That you know, it's a weird situation because it's like they place all of this power in Lady Waynwood's um, realm. That Lady Waynwood, as Harry the Heir's ward or warder, he's the ward. That she can affect like who he's going to marry and tell him who he's going to marry. You know, even though he's past the age of, is he 18? He's definitely past the age of 16. He is, yeah, he's 18. He's 18 or 19. That somehow Lady Waynwood can tell him who to marry, and because she's in a debt in a really bad debt situation, that she could influence it too. I guess they're just getting down to like, well, if Sansa is hot enough that maybe, he was, that they just said, hey, consider it, meet this girl, and he's not going to, but and that he had no intention of ever marrying her, but then maybe he'd be so enamored by her that he would be like, fuck it, I'm going to marry a bastard, even though the first books completely established all of these things about the nature of bastards. But that's the best we can go with. I mean, George R. R. Martin really tries to stretch things in the Elaine story on like the importance of Littlefinger and their money situation, and Lady Waynwood's power as the person that's warding Harry, and all of these things. But it just, I don't know. It's, I admit it's hard to really make sense of, but the best you can come up with is like, people are in a lot of debt and they told Harry, just give her a shot and maybe he's going to think she's really hot, and that's about it. But no, I don't, it doesn't really make that much sense. I think Alistair and Tywin will come back alive. Could be fun. Oh, if they came back in the middle of Castle Black clusterfuck just to add to the chaos. I do think that at least Alistair Thorne is coming back alive. He's just too good of a character to kill right now. Like he's just too good of a character. Like why would you kill him off? Like everybody loves to hate Alistair Thorne. Like right? So he just I think he's coming back alive somehow. I have a very interesting idea on what I'm going to do with him. Which I think will be fun, but I would not kill him off right now. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if you really think of like the North plot, and you think of like the characters that have like the most, uh, I don't know, like just impact, where you're just like, oh right, that guy. I mean, Dolorous Ed, Alistair Thorne, like he already got rid of Pip and Gren. Pip and Gren are off at what, Shadow Tower and Eastwatch. Like who else do you really like in that area? Like we don't even know that much about most of the people. Like even when I pick somebody like Satin, we all know Satin, but we don't really know Satin's personality. We know Satin around, like because he's around, but we don't know who he is. Or like Hob, like what's his personality like? We have no idea what Hob's personality is like. You know, it would be a real mistake to kill off somebody like that. Even Dywin uh, has been given more character than a lot of people. So, um, but I do think it'd be really fun for them to come back into the middle of chaos. I mean, it'd be funny, you know, bring him back with Benjen. Like we found Benjen, and then Benjen ends up Lord Commander, and they become his right hand man. And Alistair Thorne just kind of keeps to himself that he was trying to kill Jon Snow all this time. Oh man. Um. Mm-mm. Oh, I choose Kevin Lannister and Garland Tyrell. This is our people for the to be on the small council. I mean, we Kevin Lannister does prove to be um really quite exceptional when we get to his epilogue. He What's funny is that Tyrion has an analysis of him that essentially George R. R. Martin decided to throw in the trash. Um, and thank goodness, he because the epilogue is really great, and Kevin is a really great character in that epilogue. But I think it's Tyrion describes him as being like really he really insults him and doesn't think there's anything to him. Like he doesn't think he has any intelligence of his own, and he just like caves to Tywin. But in the end, like you know, you find out that no, Kevin's not like that at all. Um, and we get a little hint of that when Cersei talks to Kevin at the beginning of Feast, that Kevin is his own person and is is not that dumb. But it's funny. It's funny that the Tyrion that's just not Tyrion's assessment. But in the end, George decided, well, what's more interesting and more fun, you know, to have Kevin be an idiot or to have him be intelligent. And so in the end, like he was intelligent. So we got that really good epilogue. Um, okay, seriously, what happened to the Tower of Joy in all likelihood? And did Eddard leave on horseback solo with a baby and a Dane sword? Um, I think that it is pretty clear that he left with a baby. I think there is I think that it's pretty clear that we hear about a bed of blood, and there's enough parallels to the beginning of the story where they're talking about keeping a baby direwolf alive with like milk and a towel, and they're talking about these kind of weird logistics that 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 the Tower of Joy is in there, that there's elements of that. I think it's pretty clear that yes, that he leaves with the baby. Um and we're told that he and um uh we're told that he and um Howland Reed are the only ones that leave that day. Like that's fairly clear. But of course the question is like, how did he keep the baby alive? Well, I guess he did the whole like milk and towel thing, or there were farmers and holdfasts the whole way. There where he just like he left the Tower of Joy, and it turns out what's like 5 minutes up the road from the Tower of Joy is like a farm. Like it could easily be that. Like it wasn't really that big of a deal. We had this epic battle, and then yeah, 5 minutes away there was a farm, and I was like, hey, I got this baby. Do you have somebody that can be a wet nurse? Oh yeah, my daughter just had her third baby. She can you pay me some money. You can. I mean, it could be something very simple like that. We don't even need the logistics of like milk in a towel. Um. So yeah, I mean, I think all that yes, there was a battle of the Tower of Joy and everybody died, except for Howland and Ned. Somebody was saying that two people taking down a tower is not actually that hard. Some people think that if you go to the top of the tower and you just start pushing bricks, that two men can bring down a tower if you want. Um, so I think that's probably not too many surprises. I think what is the bigger surprise is like, who's the baby, and what happens at Starfall. Like that's the big mystery. Everybody's like, what happened to the Tower of Joy? Probably how it happened to the Tower of Joy is it's probably not too much of a mystery. Like, yeah, Lyanna was there, she died, she had a baby, he took the baby, um they destroyed the tower. But the real mystery is like what happens at Starfall. No one knows what happened at Starfall. But um does everything make sense at the Tower of Joy? No, but you could probably come up with some random reason to have it happen, you know. Um, so him and Howland Reed, the Dane's sword and a baby. Yeah, I guess that's what happened. I don't think we have you know we don't have too much to contradict that. You'd have to say like Ned doesn't know his own mind to go against that. And we do, there is just things in the story about like grabbing babies, taking babies, fleeing places with babies. This is funny. Preston is going to kill Ghost in the fanfic because CGI is expensive. um Deadwood is one of the best ensemble casts ever. Oh, that's interesting. Everybody. Deadwood right after Deadwood overrated. Too much time spent reintroducing every characters, huh? Um, how will resurrected Jon Snow be different? Um, I think that if George R. R. Martin were to bring back Jon, I think that one, we would lose him as a point of view in the same way that we lost Catelyn as a point of view. And there's this idea that once you come back, you're that some piece of you is lost. We've been told this by Beric Dondarrion, and the idea is that Beric Dondarrion became much more serious, much more dour once he comes back. And so something similar could happen with Jon Snow um, if he came back. But I think you'd absolutely lose him as a point of view, and I think that he would be more serious. I always thought that the story was going to have people following him. He'd be like a Jesus character. That everyone around him would be like, oh my gosh, he came back to dead. We've got to start worshiping him. And certainly Melisandre would start worshiping him. Everyone, and then he would have some sort of weird religious movement, making the reconciliation with Dany a difficult thing. But that's what I sort of envision. But I also think it's more interesting, maybe even just not bring Jon back at all, but keep him inside Ghost the whole time. I think that's also an interesting story, to never resurrect him. But though I admit it was almost certainly like George's original outline to have John come back from the dead, because that's what we saw in the show. And he's making him the Jesus character, or whatever. So but I think if you're talking about like John's personality, it's like we can look to Beric Dondarrion. I mean, you could also say, well, can't you look to Lady Stoneheart? Well, yeah, probably, but we want to lose. There's too many point of views, so you gotta keep John out of it. Got to keep John out of the writing. Um, oh, if you're Rhaenyra, what rewards do you think would have been sufficient for Ulf the White and Hugh the Hammer to prevent betrayal? Huh. That is an interesting question. Um, I mean, this is, I guess this is just the question with any like large army, like, and you have some sort of general with a lot of power. Like, what do you do? How do you keep them in control? Um, when so much power is in their hands. This was the problem with Rome. Um, uh, during the during the as they say, during the first triumvirate, you know, you Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus like had the armies split in three, and back then the Romans weren't too smart. Like the generals could keep the spoils of war rather than transferring them to the state. So after Caesar had so much success in Gaul, and he can't, he was absolutely rich, and Crassus dies, Pompey is worried that Caesar is going to take over because he's got too much power and wealth. And so, he says, don't cross the Rubicon. But, alia acta est. So like what do you do with Ulf and Hugh? They have so much power. How do you control them? What do you offer them? um, I mean, I guess you offer them marriages. I guess they should have offered them Bela and Rhaena, right? Um, Bela and Rhaena, because they're no longer, spoilers, they're no longer betrothed at some point. And Ulf the White and Hugh the Hammer could have married them, been married into the family, and then been given uh, lordships. I mean, they didn't want. What were they offered? I mean, they were thinking they could have what, Highgarden, right? That was their ambitions. But in the end, like, essentially, you have to like give them that. They have so much fucking power. What else are you gonna do? What else are you gonna do? You're kind of just you're stuck. You're stuck in the situation where you either have to kill them or you have to give them something very significant. So you give them a marriage to a princess. You give them a keep or whatever. It's the only thing you can do. Um, but yeah, they would have needed to give them like major lordship or a very good marriage. But because they're just bastards, can you do that? But yeah, I think some major lordship like that. I mean, if they're giving Harrenhal away right and left, why not just give them Harrenhal? Everybody gets Harrenhal. But anyway, I would say give them something like that. You got to. They've got so much power. You're just at their mercy. Um, but the Greens offered them. Did the Greens? I mean, that's the thing is, did the Greens ever think they were going to give them Highgarden, or are they always going to kill them? Because right, wasn't that the whole thing? Like leave Rhaenyra and we'll give you Highgarden, and then he's like, well, why stop at Highgarden? Um, yeah, Ulf desired Highgarden as his seat, not considering Bitterbridge sufficient. Yeah. When when they have nuclear weapons, what do you do? Ned's son-in-law is in Marine and would want the bones. For all he knows, his future children may rule from Winterfell. Um, that's a good point. That this is like Tyrion. The idea is that Tyrion would have a gift for. Uh, he would have a gift for the Starks when he returns, like um, which is funny because he tried to give it as a gift, right? He tried to give it as a gift uh, way back in Clash, and then it ends up back in his hands again. Um, so if Tyrion thinks that Winterfell is his, the thing is Tyrion, you know, is more focused on Casterly Rock, which is funny. He's not focused on Winterfell at all. He doesn't really think that like, oh, I'm actually the married to Sansa. Um, he doesn't believe that any of that's going to happen, but he thinks Casterly Rock's going to happen. So yeah, it's I could see that. I could see him wanting. You could say it would be a nice gift that maybe Dany would be like, yeah, it's okay. Seems like maybe it would be something to offer when she finally meets a Stark. You know. Um, what stars would need to align for HBO to reboot the original Game of Thrones series like they're doing with Harry Potter? How soon could it happen? Oh God. I mean, I just don't think it would be happening anytime soon because you've got to. I mean, realistically, okay, like we all kind of think that the Harry Potter reboot is bonkers, but it's amazing to me that that's happening. I can't believe it's happening. But if I was thinking about a Game of Thrones reboot, you would need, well, first off, you'd need like Dunk and Egg to be over and House of the Dragon to be over. So what, next year we get Dunk and Egg, and then we get season 3 House of the Dragon. 2 years later, that's what, 2025, 2026 we get season 3 of House of the Dragon. 2028 we get season 4 of House of the Dragon. Maybe Duncan Egg is still going. Maybe Duncan, like, say the ratings. This is hard because say the ratings go down to take certain shows off the air because you need to have House of the Dragon kind of like go down a little bit in ratings for them not to like say give them a season 5 or then you'd have to have like all the other ideas like gone. Like, oh, we're not going to do Aegon's Conquest. We're not going to do ET or whatever. Like those all have to be gone too. But the show still kind of needs to be popular enough for them to want to do it, right? You've got this, like if ratings crash and they cancel all the shows, then they don't think there's money in it, so they wouldn't want to do a reboot. But if people keep watching the shows, they're going to think that people are going to watch anything as long as it's Game of Thrones. And so they'll start throwing all the shit at the wall. And so you're in this catch-22. Like if people stop watching, they wouldn't reboot it. If people do watch it, they would just keep throwing shit. So you'd need to run out of ideas and then get to that point. You'd have to, they'd have to keep watching and then exhaust ideas. The big difference between Game of Thrones and Harry Potter is that they only tried one other idea, and the Fantastic Beasts. And it didn't fail completely, but it didn't do great, right? And so they're like, okay, people, there's still high interest in Harry Potter. The theme parks are still doing great. The people are still buying the books. They just don't want to see this Fantastic Beasts thing. So they kind of said other ideas are no good. We got to go back to the main story. So, it'd be this kind of situation where like the stars would have the thing, what would align it would be somehow George puts like all the current shows fail, but George puts out Winds of Winter and it's an epic success. And he puts out A Dream of Spring and it's an epic success. And they realize there's still a lot of money and people care about the Ice and Fire core series. They just don't care about the periphery shit. You essentially have to have the same thing happen that happened in Harry Potter. That there was that the interest in the core story remained, but the periphery shit was given up. But I don't see HBO giving up the periphery shit. Like they still love the periphery shit. The periphery shit is doing well, ratings wise. So yeah, I mean, we're not going to see it for a long time. And I'm talking like you would not see a Game of Thrones reboot for at least 20 years. At least 20 years. I mean, we're not even getting to the point where like 5 years, House of the Dragon and Dunkin' Egg is still in the air. So we have that. So then it would have to be, you'd have to have things fail and all the periphery stuff fail and people still to be like, oh, we got to focus on the main series, but we don't even have an ending to the main series. So the things that need to align for a reboot of the original Game of Thrones would be George finishing the series, finishing it differently, everyone having a really big interest in the main series and them deciding to do it again. But yeah, you're talking, I mean, maybe I could say like 15 years. Like that would be the soonest I could see it happening. But again, George would have to finish the books. I don't think they're doing a reboot without the rest of the books. Rate my tinfoil. Lemore is Lyanna, and Ashara is the one buried in Winterfell. I'm trying to think if there's any way in Ned's head he could accept that Lyanna was still alive. Right? Is there any way that the Ned story, that the secret he's keeping is that Lyanna is still alive? The thing is, okay, Eddard 2, he says it had taken another death to reconcile them, Lyanna's death, and the grief they had shared over her passing. It'd be really, really hard when he's straight up said that Lyanna's dead. Now you can kind of be like, okay, what Ned meant was Lyanna's passing and the grief he had, but would he really be he says all this stuff like Lyanna as she lay dying and the price he paid to keep them. I mean, it would be fun as anything if Lyanna were secretly alive, but that would be a really big twist of the text in that respect to have Lyanna survive when Ned is the one person, he's the one person there, and he's like, yes, she was dying, but then she made it, and her passing was really like metaphorical, like she'd become somebody else, and somehow she became a septa of all people when she follows the old gods. But That'd be something. That'd be something. But yes, high tinfoil. That would be pretty fun. Have you read The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams? It's claimed that the trilogy was a major influence on George R. R. Martin. Both Song of Ice and Fire and A Dragonbone Chair share more than a few similarities. Heard it from the channel Random Internet Guy. Yeah, no, I've been told this a bit. I think people specifically talk about Melisandre's religion and lore and stuff being very similar. Um, let's see, Dragonbone Chair came out in '88, right before George started writing. George started writing in '91. Also, I'm trying to think who the publisher was. One of the things is that George really knows like the Tor family stuff, like because he was um, publishing with them, but it's not like he doesn't read all the other kind of stuff, but I think I'm trying to remember if he's specifically mentioned it. The problem is that like um, there's so much crossover with fantasy that it's hard to oh, there's a Guardian article about it. Tad Williams. When the American fantasy writer Tad Williams first met the Game of Thrones author George R. R. Martin, Martin growled at him, "Get the hell out of here." Oh, he meant go home and finish the series. Yeah. So I guess he was reading it. So yeah, I mean, I haven't read it yet, but people have told me this a few times that they really that Dragonbone Chair has a lot of influence. Benjen is Mance. I mean, that's a tough one. It's a tough one when John has met Mance and he's met Benjen. It's a tough one when they were both at supposedly at the Winterfell feast together. Now, granted, maybe Mance is lying about being at the Winterfell feast, and he's really Benjen, and he uses a glamour. But John remembers Mance visiting Winterfell when he was a kid. And this was back when Mance had a history of existing as a person doing stuff at the Shadow Tower, while Benjen was a person doing stuff at Castle Black. The fact that like he was the two couldn't really be in the same like it was he couldn't be living lives having history in two places at the same time. So as fun as that would be, no. Will Bloodraven warg into a second human life? I don't know. We don't know if you can warg into a human being as a second human life. I mean, certainly Vermeer Sixskins tries it, but we don't know if it's actually possible. Bran has done it somewhat, like in Hodor, but do you have to have Bran level power? And keep in mind, Bran is more powerful than Bloodraven, so like do you have to have an affected person like Hodor who has mental issues, and do you have to have Bran level powers? I don't know if Bloodraven doesn't seem to have the abilities. Just he doesn't seem to be that powerful. I mean, I don't know who he would go into. I mean, jump into Hodor. So who knows? All right, I'm gonna need to go to bed soon here. Hopefully I'm getting through these super chats, but it's pretty late for me right now. A Song of Ice and Fire needs to find its Brian Sibley. The Peter Jackson films are often praised, but are scene by scene replications of Sibley's 1981 BBC radio adaptation. Really? Um, that's really. I mean, that's really interesting. Um, I've never listened to the these ones, but I don't know. It's quite a bold statement to say that that some of them are that scenes are actually just like ripped from this other medium. The various radio dramas I've listened to the Star Wars radio dramas for Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and I've listened to the Hitchhiker's Guide radio dramas. It's interesting that these the British radio dramas remained kind of popular into later times. Like some people even talk about like Doctor Who still has radio dramas and stuff like that. Like later Doctor Who, not early Doctor Who. So anyway, that's another thing I have to listen to sometime to see if there's similarities. Victorian brings Ned's bones as a weird gift to Dany. That would be interesting. That's good. He tries to get in with Dany by saying, uh, you know, these are my gift to you, like the bones of the usurper. That'd be something. That'd be interesting. Um, what would she do with him? She feeds him to her dragon. She tosses him into the sea. House of the Dragon question: how do you think they're going to handle the Gullet battle insofar as Aegon III escapes? Is there even a dragon big enough to carry him? Got the impression all the dragons with him were too small. You know, I thought about this a little bit. So the things they've done differently is they've initially already sent um, Aegon the Third and Viserys to the Vale, and I don't think. Let me double check this. I don't want to say something. Yeah, they were never in the Vale in the source material. Just Joffrey is sent to the Vale, and so I mean, you could rather than having people like fly off or whatever, because the dragons are too small. They've made Aegon the Third's dragon younger. They could just have like a ship sink, or and not have the exciting scene of him flying off or whatever. I think they're just not gonna show it. Not gonna show his escape. They'll just like have the battle just happen or something, and then does Aegon the Third go back to where does he hide after that? He goes to Viserys. I'm trying to think of where Aegon was. Okay, Aegon the Third after the Gullet. Where does he fly? He after the Gullet, he gets the gay abandoned. He clung to the dragon's neck, goes back to Dragonstone, and then Aegon feels guilty. And then Aegon stays with Rhaenyra. And that's it. Huh. Okay. So, hmm. I mean, they could easily just have him like Aegon not even there. Just bring him back. Have the battle be something else. Um, but yeah, I mean, they just have a big sea battle. One of the ship that Viserys is on goes missing. They assume he's dead. Aegon the Third's ship gets back to Dragonstone. They just don't even have the escape. They don't have the harrowing escape. They just focus on Jace. I think that's probably how they're gonna do it, and that's it. Just not even bother with the dragon. Um, even have his have his hatchling get killed in the battle off screen. Like it's not that important. Okay, let's see here. Please make the Blackfish like love Sweet Robin. Um, it's an interesting idea. I haven't I've only thought briefly about like what the Blackfish is going to be focused on and whether or not he's going to be very focused on battle and just kind of ignoring Sweet Robin, because the idea is that Elaine's power over Sweet Robin exists because everybody else does not provide him any sort of emotional support, and she's the only one that does it. And so if Blackfish like provides too much emotional support, then what's the function of Elaine? Um, though we'll see. We'll see how the things go. Going forward, it may be that also the Blackfish is off battling, and he's not even around Sweet Robin very much. And so we don't even have to address this issue of whether he likes um, how much he likes Sweet Robin. Like for instance, we don't really know how much affection the Blackfish had for Lysa. Like he lived there for years and years and years, years and years and years with Lysa, and yet, he talks about her a little bit like she's crazy, but does how much how much was he really hurt when Lysa died? How much did it affect him? How much emotion did he have over the death of Lysa? We don't know. We don't know. Um, so, um, animated reboot of the main series. Way to go. I think an animated reboot would be great, but again, like it's a real problem when it's not finished. When there's no end. Um, what do you do there? What do you do there? I mean, if the series were finished, yeah, then I could see someone rebooting it and finishing it because the first one wasn't really finished. You could have that argument that, oh, when George R. R. Martin actually put out the books, it was completely different. So this Game of Thrones series is, what is it? It's nothing. Um, but you'd have to have a finished book series, which we're not going to get. Like, so it's I mean, one could maybe make the argument that if Winds of Winter comes out and it's very, very different from what Game of Thrones is, then people will be like, oh, we need a proper reboot. But even though there's not an ending, we at least need something to show the Winds of Winter. So I don't know. I think you'd really need that. I think you'd really need a completed series for someone to want to really reboot it. Hey PJ, have you seen the Game of Thrones histories and lore videos? In one from season one, they kind of confirm that Littlefinger is setting up Brandon Stark about Lyanna. Pura Vida from CR. I have not seen all of the histories and lores. That's interesting though. But again, like who knows who wrote those, and the history and lores now get contradicted by House of the Dragon all the time. But um been doing Valyrian on Duolingo and has me wondering how you going to handle characters speaking Valyrian. um, for the Winds of Winter fanfic. We have some Valyrian in the Dany chapter. Um, no, no, I'm sorry, we have some Dothraki there. But how do we handle the Valyrian? Um, no, we do have some characters speaking High Valyrian in the battle. Um, in fact, we put a little more focus on it than George does. George just kind of has the characters talking to each other, and we just kind of accept it. Which I don't know why it kind of happens. Like Tyrion specifically says that he kind of doesn't know. Like he studied High Valyrian in a bookish way, but the accents are all weird and off, and they screw with him. But when he actually makes it to Slaver's Bay, he's just talking to everybody. He's talking to random slaves. Um, George kind of starts ignoring the Giscari High Valyrian common tongue, like separation. Like Barristan is all of a sudden just like everybody's screaming stuff and it's fine, you know. But when we did the fanfic, when we did the battles and stuff, we kind of did mention that people are speaking different languages. Oh, they started with this and then they switched to this and stuff like that. So I'm a little anal on it. I think a lot about like what languages the people speak and when. So that's for the most part going to be there. It's going to be an issue with Tyrion though, because I guess Tyrion is going to be in Marine, and he needs to talk to people like Skahaz, and that's probably going to be an issue, you know, where they're speaking High Valyrian to each other, and we just kind of have to accept that like Tyrion has gotten the hang of High Valyrian. Probably need a passing line that he's really good at High Valyrian now. He's gotten the hang of it. But I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that Tyrion needs to talk to that wouldn't know the language. Because keep in mind, like the Barristan stuff. I mean, all these random pit fighters that should only know Giscari or whatever are all of a sudden talking to Barristan. It's like Barristan learned Giscari. When did that happen? You know, like George R. R. Martin just kind of like, you know, kind of passes over some of this. Like, are they speaking Giscari? Are they speaking High Valyrian here? Like, but we're going to focus on it. It's thought about. We think about it like with the various characters. So, and finally, most handsome person in A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, it's clearly Jaime Lannister. I mean, right? He's supposed to be beautiful, or he's supposed to be pretty, but he's supposed to be very handsome. So is Loras, right? They're supposed to be very handsome. They're supposed to be very handsome people. I'm trying to think of anybody else who's really good looking. I mean, could throw in a Carl the Maid. Is Carl the Maid? How good looking is Carl the Maid? Isn't he supposed to be a good looking guy? Grandson of the Thrall. Beardless and pink cheeks, straight sandy hair, lean swimmer physique. Seems like he's pretty good looking. Yeah, Drogo speaks Dothraki despite having a Mance and Pentos. Yeah, I talked about a bit in going over the Daenerys thing. It's George wanted that scene between Dany and Drogo where they couldn't speak to each other and the only thing he knew was the word no. Does that scene actually make any sense? No. George wanted that scene though in the end. And so he was going to make that scene happen because it's a very memorable scene. These two people that are about to have sex that have no language and he only speaks the word no. Does that make any sense considering that like Khal Drogo has to do diplomacy and has a house in Pentos and has visited there many times, and Dany specifically says that he actually speaks some High Valyrian and that she isn't trying to talk to him in High Valyrian, No, yeah, it makes no fucking sense. Like the scene, but George pushed forward because that scene is very memorable. So, but yeah, it's also like it's also not realistic that he doesn't speak any High Valyrian in the sense that like High Valyrian is like the international language. So it's a bit like somebody like you can go to any place on this earth right now and people know a few words of English. Like because it's the international language. And especially when you're talking about the king, like the head, the Cal, who has to do diplomacy, who spent time in Pentos, like, yeah, he's gonna know some words. He's gonna know like I want this. Thank you. You know, he's gonna know that. And I want would have been a really useful thing to say in a sex scene, you know, like, but there it is. George wanted that scene between Dany and Drogo, which doesn't really make any sense. So yeah. Oh well. But oh yeah, probably Alaris. Alaris is supposed to be the best looking, very good looking. You're right. Even though, you know. Satin. Good call. Harry the Heir. Harry the Heir is supposed to be pretty good looking. Um yeah. You know what's funny? Somebody brought this up recently, and this is the last thing, and then I gotta go to bed, guys. But how in so much fiction and so many movies, good looking people are always assholes, and then like the you know the regular people are nice, and in truth, like good looking people are really nice because they've been treated nice by everyone in life. And everything is given to them. So it's more like the John Hamm character from 30 Rock, you know, where he's just like, everybody, what do you do? Everybody's so nice to me all the time. You know, like that's good looking people tend to be actually, you know, pretty nice because everyone's been nice to them forever. But in Ice and Fire, if you're good looking, you're probably super arrogant and entitled and a jerk, you know. So um but yeah. All right, guys, thank you for being with me, and I will talk to you guys next time. And thanks for everything. See ya.